6. Word filtered around that Kerry had won New Hampshire. He was going to be the Democrat nominee for the president. There it is, Sasha Homa. She played with the end of her beaded dreadlocks. 4 more years. Emily sat in the back row. She didn't join in these discussions. She was kind of a loner. Why would we back him? Argued a boy. Kerry's pro-media. He'll be better for us. Because Bush is polarizing, thought Emily. Because Bush is polarizing, Sashona said. She had 16 classes per week. In between, she was expected to study and practice, not all the other students. That was her rule. Her first day, wearing a uniform that still smelled of the plastic wrapping, she stood in Charlotte's office and taken a lecture. There are many rules, and Charlotte took her through each of them, patiently and in detail, like Emily was retarded. At first, Emily thought this was because Charlotte was carrying a grudge, but as the lecture wore on, she realized no, Charlotte just thought that she was that stupid. This is a non-negotiable rule of the school, Charlotte said. Indeed, of the organization as a whole. Should you break it, there will be no excuses, no second chances. Am I making myself clear? You're making yourself clear, Emily said. At this point, she didn't know what practicing meant. It took her months to find out. She thought they were going to teach her persuasion. Instead, she got philosophy, psychology, sociology, and the history of language. Back in San Francisco, Lee had given her a little speech about how this school would be different because it was taught interesting, useful things. And that was a joke, in Emily's opinion. Grammar was not interesting. It was not useful to know where words came from, and no one explained it. There was no overview, no roadmap. Classes were 8 to 12 students of wildly different ages, all of them ahead of Emily, and no one asking the obvious questions. She had to stay up at night, staring at textbooks, trying to figure out why any of this mattered. She learned Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which was the order in which people optimally satisfied different types of desires: food, safety, love, status, enlightenment. She learned that leverage over people's desire for knowledge was called informational social influence, while leverage over people's desire to be liked was normative social influence. She learned that you could classify a person's personality into one of 228 psychographic categories with a small number of well-directed questions plus observation, and this was called segmentation. I thought this was going to be cooler, she complained to Elliot. He was a part-time lecturer teaching a few advanced classes which did not include her. Whenever she saw his car parked out front, she headed for his office because he was the only one she could talk to. I thought it would be like magic. Elliot was busy with papers, but she figured he had an obligation to deal with her, since it was basically his fault she was here. Sorry, he said. At your level, it's just books. When is it like magic? When you finish the books, Elliot said. By the end of the year, she could see where it was going. She wasn't learning persuasion, was still deep in Plato and neurolinguistics and political roots of the Russian Revolution, but she was starting to sense the connections between them. One day, she got to dissect a human brain, and as she peered through the goggles at a frontal lobe, sliding the scalpel through the meat, separating decision-making from motor function, memory from reward centers, she thought, hello, because she knew what the meat did. She played soccer. You had to do a sport, soccer or basketball or water polo, and she was short and hated the swimsuit, so soccer. On Wednesday afternoons, she lined up with the other girls, shin guards stuffed into knee-high purple socks, her hair dragged back, a yellow shirt billowing, and she chased a ball around a field. The girls were all ages, so it was mostly an exercise in kicking the ball to the oldest and shouting encouragement. The exception was Sashona, who was only Emily's age, but strong and graceful and had shoulders like battering rams. Soccer was supposed to be a non-contact, but Sashona's shoulders would put you on your butt anyway. After a goal, she would pump her fists, unsmiling like she was satisfied but not surprised, and although Emily didn't enjoy soccer much, she found this terribly impressive. She wanted to be as good as something as Sasoma was at soccer. At night, she sat by the window of her cloistered room, books piled on her desk. She studied, her hair pinned up and her school tie slung. She didn't really enjoy reading, but she liked how the books were clues, each one a piece in a puzzle. Even when they didn't fit together, they revealed a little more about what kind of picture she was making. One day, exploring a corridor she'd always assumed went nowhere, She discovered a secret library. She didn't know if it was actually a secret, but it wasn't marked and she never saw anyone else. It was very small with shelves that stretched up so high she needed a wooden ladder to reach them. Up there the books were old. The first time she cracked open a volume, its pages came apart in her hands. After that she was more careful. It occurred to her that maybe she was not allowed here, but that had not been included in Charlotte's comprehensive list of rules, and the old books turned out to be interesting, so she stayed. One shelf was for disaster stories. There was probably a classification scheme she hadn't figured out, but the common thread seemed to be that a lot of people died. After a few books, she realized they were all the same story. They were set in different places, in Sumeria and Mexico and countries she'd never heard of, and the details differed. But the basics were the same. A group of people, sometimes they were called sorcerers, sometimes demons, and sometimes they were just ordinary people, ruled over a kingdom or nation or whatever. In four of the books, they began building something impressive, like a crystal palace or the world's largest pyramid. And something bad happened, and people died, and everyone started speaking different languages. The story felt vaguely familiar to Emily, but she didn't place it until she came to a book in which the impressive thing was a tower named Babel. She thought she heard a noise and froze, but it was far away. She suddenly saw herself sitting on the floor of a library in a blazer and a pleated skirt, navy ribbons in her hair, reading old books. Before she had come here, Emily had seen girls like this, girls who wore ribbons and enjoyed books, and thought they were a different species. She had thought they were separated by walls, yet here she was on the other side, and she didn't know how she had done it. She didn't feel like a different person. She was just in a different place. The junior dining hall made excellent chocolate milkshakes. Emily got into the habit of swinging by after macroeconomics and carrying one out to a sunny spot on the grass at the side of the building where she could read. The cup was comically big. She always felt a little sick at the end of it, but she kept going back. One day she passed a boy with a laptop at one of the outdoor tables. She had seen this boy in the halls, but they didn't share any classes because he was older. He was more advanced. She snuck a glance at him, and another because he was pretty cute. The next day he was there again, and this time he looked up as she passed. His eyes took in her enormous milkshake. She kept walking to her sunny spot, but couldn't concentrate on her book. The day after that, he saw her coming, stretched, and pushed the hair out of his eyes. "Thirsty, huh?" She smiled, because she had been thinking of saying something, and the something was, "Boy, am I thirsty." "Yeah," she said, "I am thirsty." She walked on. On Wednesday, she bought an extra milkshake and deposited it on his table. His eyes, gray and soft as pillows, registered surprise. "I thought you looked thirsty, too." She walked away, pleased with herself. On Thursday, she brought him no drink. She had thought about this. She simply walked by. There was a terrible moment when she thought she wouldn't say anything. Maybe he was too engrossed in his computer and hadn't noticed her. Should she circle around again, or was that too humiliating? "Hey, wait," he said. She stopped. "Thanks for the shake yesterday." "No problem." She stayed, smiling, hoping it wasn't over. "I've never been a milkshake guy, but they're good." "They're better than good," she said. "I'm addicted." She sucked at her straw. He leaned back. "Do you want to sit?" "I have a bunch of reading to do. Thanks, though. Maybe another time." She walked away. He didn't try to stop her, which was a little disappointing. He didn't seek her out later, either. That was okay. She was playing a long game. It was naughty. What she was doing was practicing, trying to persuade another student. But only a little. Nothing she'd get in trouble for. The fact was, if you paid attention, people tried to persuade each other all the time. It was all they did. The next day she headed for her sunny spot with no milkshake. Her heart thumped because if he saw this and didn't respond, she would look pitiful. But she rounded the corner and his computer was closed and on the table were two milkshakes. He smiled and gestured for her to sit, and she did. His name was Jeremy Latin. He wanted to be a zookeeper. His family had a tiny house in Brooklyn, and his mother rescued animals, rabbits and mice and ducks and dogs and two chickens. One of the chickens was insane. It ran in circles, making noises like it was drowning. His parents had wanted to get rid of it, but Jeremy pleaded for mercy. He thought he could cure it. He imagined this chicken becoming his friend and people saying, "Jeremy's the only one who can go near that chicken." But this never happened. One day the chicken attacked him, pecking his face, and his father wrung at his neck. That was how he got the small scar near his left eye and decided against zoology. Emily told him that her family were Canadian and she was raised in hockey. She described how she was 6 Her father took her to a game and she was terrified because the crowd was so angry. There was an incident, a splash of players on the ice, and she turned to her father for protection, but his face was monstrous. On the way home, he asked if she'd had fun, and she said yes, but whenever she even saw hockey on TV, she felt sick. These were all lies, of course. You couldn't tell a student anything true about yourself. That wasn't a rule exactly, it was obvious. She was in her second year and learning how people could be categorized into distinct psychographic groups based on how their brain worked. Segment 107, for example, was an intuition and fear motivated introvert personality. Those people made decisions based on avoiding the worst outcomes, found primary colors reassuring, and when asked to pick a random number, would choose something small which felt less vulnerable. If you knew someone was a 107, you knew how to persuade them, or at least which persuasion techniques were more likely to work. This was not very different from what Emily had always done, without thinking about it too much. You developed a sense of what Mark desired or feared, and used that to compel them. It was the same with more theory. So that was why you shouldn't talk about yourself and why the older students were so aloof and inscrutable, to avoid being identified. To guard against persuasion, you had to hide who you were. But she suspected she was not very good at this. She guessed there were whole bunches of clues she was inadvertently dropping to someone like Jeremy Lattern every time she opened her mouth, or cut her hair, or chose a sweater. She figured the reason the school had a no practicing rule was that sometimes people did it. Tell me what they teach you, she said. Give me a sneak preview. They were making slushies. They had progressed beyond milkshakes. The advantage of the slushie was you had to leave school grounds. Tuesdays and Fridays, the weather was clear. They walked the 3/4 of a mile to the nearest 7-Eleven. She liked walking beside Jeremy Lattern, because cars would zoom by and the drivers would probably assume she was his girlfriend. You use very direct language, he said. You don't ask, you command. That's a useful instinct. So tell me while I'm learning Latin. I can't. Do you always follow the rules? Yes. Bah, she said, defeated. The rules are important. What they teach us is dangerous. What they teach you is dangerous. What they teach me is Latin. Dude, I'm not asking for state secrets. Just give me something, one thing. He attached the slushy lid and poked the straw through the plastic. Bah, she said again. They walked to the front of the store and stood in line behind a kid paying for gas. The man behind the counter was balding, in his 50s, Pakistani or something like it. She nudged Jeremy. Which segment is this guy? He didn't answer. I'm thinking 118. Am I right? Come on, I'm doing segmentation. You can answer the question. Maybe 170. She hadn't considered that one, but saw instantly how it made sense. See, that wasn't so bad. Now what? What do we do once we know he's a 170? We pay for our slushies, Jeremy said. She hung with Jeremy in his room sometimes. Once she stuck chewing gum into the lock before she left and came back when she knew he had a class. She went to his bookshelf and pulled down 3 titles she had been eyeing for a while. She was sitting on his bed, deep in sociographic methods, when the door opened. Jeremy stood there, one hand on the knob. She had never seen him mad before. Give me that. No, she sat on it. Do you know what they'll do? He cried to grab it, and she resisted, and he landed on top of her. This she slightly engineered. His breath brushed her face. She let the textbook slide out and clunk to the floor. He raised a hand and it hovered a moment, then came down on her breast. She inhaled. He moved his hand away. Keep going, she said. I can't. Yes, you can. He rolled off. It's not allowed. Come on, she said. We're not allowed to be together. That was a rule. Fraternization. It's not safe. For who? Either of us. She stared at him. I'm sorry, he said. She shuffled closer. She touched his white shirt. She had spent a lot of time imagining taking off his shirt. I won't tell anyone. She stroked his chest through the fabric. Then his hand closed on hers. I'm sorry, he said. What's with this fraternization rule? She asked Elliot. She wandered about his office, fingering books, being casual. Elliot looked up from his papers. Originally, Emily had been going to ask, why can't we have sex? Because just once she would like to see Elliot surprised or offended. Or anything, really, just to prove that he was human. But then she lost her nerve. Students aren't permitted to enter relationships with each other. I know what it is. I'm asking why. You know why. She sighed. Because if you let someone know you well, they can persuade you. But that's incredibly cold, Elliot. She went to the window. Outside, she watched a sparrow hop across the slate roof. That's no way to live. He didn't reply. Are you saying for the rest of my life I can't have a relationship with an organization person? Yes. Do you appreciate how dull that is? Elliot didn't react. And what about, purely physical relationships? It's no different. It's completely different. Relationships, okay, I get, but not just sex. There is no just sex. It's called intimacy for a reason. That's one word, she protested. Coincidence. And the man knew Eve's his wife, and she conceived and bore Cain. Note the use of the word knew in this context. That's from 3,000 years ago. You're talking about the Bible. Exactly, the concept is not new. She shook her head, frustrated. Have you ever done it? Done what? Broken the rules, she said, fraternized. No. I don't believe you. She did. She was just pushing. You must have thought about it. What about with Charlotte? There's something going on with you guys. Your feet always point toward her, and she goes very still around you. It's like when we're acting up in class and she's trying not to get peed. She goes still when she's trying to control her emotions. I need to get some work done if you don't mind. He sounded completely unruffled. I think Charlotte wants to fraternize with you, Emily said, badly. Out. I'm going, she laughed. She was more frustrated than ever. She turned 18. She lay in bed a while, thinking about what that meant. Anything? She got up and went to class, and of course nobody knew. At lunch, she walked to the 7-Eleven with Jeremy and debated telling him the whole way. Finally, while filling her slushie, she said, I'm 18 today. He looked surprised. This was the kind of information you were not supposed to share. I didn't get you anything. I know, I just wanted to tell you. He was silent. They walked to the front of the store. She smiled at the man behind the counter. It's my birthday today. Oh my goodness. Finally free. She leaned across the counter, grinning. Free to give a long and happy life. I tell you what, he said. I give you the slushie for free. Oh no, she said. Happy birthday. He pushed it across to her. You are a good girl. As I left the store, Jeremy seized her arm. Give a happy life? Finally free? She smiled, but he was serious. He steered her to a bench out beside the road and sat her on it and stood there, glowering. She felt a tickle in her stomach, simultaneously sickening and thrilling. You can't do that. I got a slushie. One free slushie. It's a serious breach of the rules. Come on. Like word suggestion is even a real technique. I bet it's nothing compared to what you can do. That's not the point. Is this because he gave me a present and you didn't? You think the rules don't apply to you? They do. You can't practice. Not outside the school. Not on that guy. Not on me. You? When have I ever practiced on you? She poked him with her shoe. As if I could compromise you. You're going to graduate next year and I don't know anything. Come on, sit. Drink slushie. It's my birthday. Promise me you will never do that again. Okay, Jeremy, I was just playing. After a while, he sat. She leaned her head on his shoulder. She felt very close to him. I promise not to turn you into my thought slave, she said, and felt him smile a little, but she had thought about it. The next Tuesday, she hung around the school gates, but Jeremy didn't show up for their slushie run. She trudged back to the school. Something must have come up, some class. He was getting busier. But she passed the front lawn, and there he was, lounging with his friends, his pant legs rolled up in the sun. You're talking in the way of the older students, no one laughing or even moving much, every sentence dripping with irony and layers of meaning, or so Emily guessed. She stopped, heads turned. Jeremy glanced at her and then away. She walked on. She understood that they couldn't be seen together too often. They could not be attached. She knew this. She reached her room and sat at her desk and opened a book. If she turned her head, she would have looked down to the lawn and seen Jeremy and his little group and conceited friends. But she did not. Occasionally she leaned back and stretched her arms or fiddled with her hair, because she knew he could see her too. From time to time she saw students with ribbons tied around their wrists. The ribbon was red or white. If it was red, it meant a senior taking his final exam. The rule was not to talk to them, or even look too closely, although of course Emily did, because one day she would be wearing that red ribbon, and she wanted to know what that meant. She had once seen a red-ribboned boy building a house of cards in the front hall. He was there for 2 days, making the house taller and taller while he grew thinner and haunted-looking, and it got so that people avoided the hall in case of drafts. Then one morning the cards were gone, and so was the boy. Emily never found out what had happened, whether he passed or failed. Another night she woke to an odd bell and went to the window to see a girl leading a cow up the driveway, an actual live cow. Emily could not deduce anything useful from this. At the end of her second year, she found a slip of paper beneath her door, notifying her of a room change for higher-level machine languages. But when she turned up, she was the only student there. The teacher, a short, balding man named Brecht, handed her a white ribbon. Congratulations! You're ready for your junior exam. She tied the ribbon around her left wrist, feeling excited. Breck told her to make the computer print the word hello on its screen. This sounded like something she could do in about 2 minutes with a command like print or echo, but Breck said not to leave the room until it was done. She sat on a cardboard box, because this was not a classroom so much as a crypt for the corpses in prehistoric computers, and flicked open a laptop. So the catch was the laptop didn't work. She crawled around testing power supplies and fans. She found a monitor that powered on but had a burned out VGA input. Everything in the room was like that, she discovered, sabotaged in key ways. She assembled a machine, Frankenstein style, from the innards of different devices. It had a hard drive and a monitor, and it powered on, but wouldn't do anything else. She had a blinking cursor that refused to respond to the keyboard. The operating system was sabotaged too. Her bladder pinged. She had drunk half a bottle of water on her way here, which was unfortunate. Her new goal was to finish this test before she needed to pee into a bag. She uncovered a BIOS problem and then a hole in the bootloader. By the time she got to the operating system, an actual responsive prompt she knew she was going to find. All the useful commands were broken. She began searching for bugs. There was one in each level, one deliberate flaw in each layer of software that lay between the screen and the echo command. There were so many layers it was kind of crazy how much code sat behind echo. She hadn't appreciated that before. There were scripts and libraries and modules and compilers and assembly code, one built on top of the other. Technically, none of it was essential. You could accomplish the same end by manually constructing circuits and moving wires, manipulating pixels one by one. But what the layers did was distill that power into commands. They let you make electrons flow and logic gates close, phosphorus glow and metal magnetize, all by typing words. She finished her silicon monster and went to fetch Brecht. He looked at the hello hanging on screen and nodded once and began to pull her machine apart. She felt a little sad. She was learning that people were just machines, and it was working the other way a little too. Over the next week, she had to be careful when approaching other students, in case they were wearing a white ribbon. Some students disappeared for days at a time. Some didn't come back at all, which Emily guessed meant they had failed. She hadn't really noticed before because the classes weren't based on age, but there were more lower years than seniors, a lot more. After exams, there were 2 weeks of vacation during which most other students went off their homes. This left Emily with the school to herself, practically. She felt bored and restless and began to hatch plots to break into people's rooms so she could learn something. She spent time with one of the few other students to stay over vacation, a doe-eyed girl with dark bangs and a permanent air of disdain. Earlier, Emily had disliked this girl quite a lot because she was older and spent a lot of time around Jeremy, but now she was basically the only other person there who could teach her anything. Emily cut her hair the same and adopted the girl's walk, which was kind of drifting, as if she was being blown through the corridors on the pages of a million mournful poems. This was not as successful as Emily had hoped, since the doe-eyed girl didn't open up at all, and Emily was stuck dumb haircut for nothing. But she did discover the girl swam for an hour every day, so Emily snuck into the locker room and stole her key. The doe-eyed girl's room was like her own. A single bed, a wooden desk, a chair, and a window looking over the grounds. But her books were completely different. The girl had Persuasion in Middle Europe and Modern Psychographics, and a small yellow book Emily had seen seniors carrying around and always been intrigued by, titled Gutturals. That one, disappointingly, turned out to be full of word fragments with no explanation or context. But she pulled down a tome with an alluring title, The Linguistics of Magic, and that was better. It was a history lesson about how people had once believed in literal magic, in wizards and witches and spells. They wouldn't tell strangers their true name, in case the stranger was a sorcerer, because once a sorcerer knew you, he could put you under his power. You had to guard that information, and if you saw someone who looked like a sorcerer, you would avert your eyes and cover your ears before they could compel you. This was where words like charmed came from, and spellbound, and fascinated, and bewitched, and enraptured, and compelled. This all seemed quaint and amusing, but as the book moved through to the modern day, nothing changed. People still fell to the influence of persuasion techniques, especially when they broadcast information about themselves that allowed identification of their personality type, their true name, basically. And the attack vectors for these techniques were primarily oral and visual. But no one thought of this as magic. It was just falling for a good line or being distracted or clever marketing. Even the words were the same. People still got fascinated or charmed or spellbound and amazed. They forgot themselves and were carried away. They just didn't think there was anything magical about that anymore. When classes resumed, they began to teach her words. No one said what these were for. Charlotte simply handed out envelopes. "Study these in private," Charlotte told them. "They are not to be shared ever with anybody. Repeat them to yourself in front of a mirror 5 times per word every night." "Until when?" asked Sashona. But Charlotte just put on her fake smile like this was an amusing question. She took the envelope marked Emily Ruff and carried it to her room. Inside were 3 pieces of paper. Just a tract. Migrants. Vartics. They were difficult to read. Her brain kept slipping in the wrong direction. They were too similar to real words, maybe. She studied them. She stood in front of the mirror and watched herself. "Varts," she said, which was supposed to be Vartics, but for some reason it took a long time to come out, time stretching and getting grainy. And not only time, but everything, the walls and mirror and air, all undergoing a slow disintegration that she could see and feel with every molecule of her being. She felt fear because she didn't want to see what was underneath the world. The sound of her voice fell to pieces, and the silence between them froze over. She regained consciousness. She realized this in retrospect. Her fingers and toes tingled. She closed her mouth. There was drool on her chin. She felt bruised in the brain. She walked to her bed and sat. She put the words back in the envelope because F doing that again, but after a while she returned to the mirror. Her mind revolted. It did not want to be bruised again, but she sucked it up. "Varts," she said. "We got words," she told Jeremy on the grass. She was being less cautious about being seen with him because he was graduating soon, and what could they do? "We have to read them to ourselves." "How did that go?" "Badly." He smiled. "Attention words are the worst." She leaped on this. "Attention words? There are types?" She knew he wouldn't answer. "What are the others? What are attention words for?" "You'll learn soon enough." "I want to know now." But the truth was, she had just figured it out. Attention words. A single word wasn't enough, not even for a particular segment. The brain had defenses, filters evolved over millions of years to protect against manipulation. The first was perception, the process of funneling an ocean of sensory input down to a few key data packages worthy of study by the cerebral cortex. When data got by the perception filter, it received attention, and she saw now that it must be like that all the way down. There must be words to attack each filter. Attention words, and then maybe desire words, and logic words, and urgency words, and command words. This is what they were teaching her, how to craft a string of words that would disable the filters one by one, unlocking each mental tumbler until the mind's last door swung open. That night she went to brush her teeth, and there was Sashona, wearing blue satin pajamas. "Are you still doing it?" "Doing what?" "The words, you know." "Oh, yeah," Sashona sighed dramatically. "It's foul, right?" "Most foul," Emily said. "There had better be a good reason for it," Sashona said, pulling back her hair. "Otherwise, I'm going to be peed." Emily nodded. It seemed pretty obvious to her that the reason was to build up resistance. This term she was taking, drama, puffing herself up and shouting at people in a voice that began in her gut, which the teacher called projecting forcefully. It was all because people were animals, analog rather than binary, and everything in nature happened in degrees. People could be partially persuaded. They could be shocked into letting down their guard. You practiced saying the words so that if anyone ever said them to you, you would stand a chance. "I can't remember mine," Shoshana said. "They keep falling out of my brain." Shoshana left. Emily brushed. Walking back to her room, she heard the TV burbling and saw Shoshana in the rec room. She hesitated, thinking about what Shoshana had said, about not being able to remember her words. She went to Shoshona's door and tried the handle, and it turned. Shoshona's room was super neat. Emily went to the bookshelf and stood on tiptoe to peer at the books. Socratic debate was sitting about half an inch, but they hadn't studied that one for a while. Emily pulled it down, balanced the book on its spine, and let it go. The pages fell open. She saw 3 slips of paper, 3 words. She closed the book and returned it to the shelf. She was trembling. When she stepped into the corridor, she was sure somebody would see her and ask what she was doing. What would she say? She didn't know. She had no idea. She was just curious. But there was no one. She closed Sashona's door and returned to her room. She climbed into bed and lay there, thinking about Sashona's words. Over time, she found 5 more sets of words. She didn't go looking for them exactly, but if someone left their room unlocked, when they went to the bathroom, she would notice that, and she might wander down to that person's bedroom and see if anything looked like it was hiding words. She didn't intend to use them for anything, but they were powerful, and they were there, so she looked out for them. She was an opportunist. It was strange how many people left their words in obvious places. She understood that you couldn't destroy them because they were slippery in your mind. When she tried to recall one of hers, her brain would offer benign variants, like fair ticks, which didn't mean anything. You needed a permanent record somewhere. But Emily had ripped hers into pieces and numbered them on the back and hidden the code to reassemble them in the margins of different textbooks. Everyone else seemed to have just stuffed them into books and drawers, or under their mattress, or in one guy's case in his pants pocket. She couldn't understand leaving something lying around that could hurt her, that could hurt you. I know everything, she told Jeremy. I figured it all out, so good news, I don't need to pester you with questions anymore. He glanced at her. He was playing basketball, or practicing basketball. The indoor court was empty but for them. Jeremy was shooting baskets from the free throw line over and over. She was watching his shiny shorts. Once upon a time there were sorcerers, she said, who were really just guys who knew a little about persuasion. And some of them did all right, ruled kingdoms and founded religions, etc., but they also occasionally got burned to death by angry mobs or beheaded or drowned while being tested for witchedness. So sometime in the last few centuries, maybe even in the last 50 or so actually, they got organized to solve the whole being burned problem. And, she gestured, here we are, no more beheadings. Jeremy released the ball. It passed through the net with a swoosh. Also, the words are getting better, she said. I'm thinking that 500 years ago, the keywords were things like bless, tribal identifiers, playing on how we trust people who think like us, believe the same things, which is a start, but obviously not what you do. It's not what Eliot or Bronte do. So the organization must have been making keywords, building them, one on top of the other, like you do with computer code. First you gain trust for a segment with weak keywords. Not a lot of trust. Just enough to teach them to believe in a stronger keyword, rinse and repeat. She sat back on her elbows. Pretty simple. I actually don't know why you thought you couldn't tell me. Have they actually taught you this? Jeremy said, or are you guessing? Ha, she said. You just confirmed it, right there. Bah, said Jeremy, throwing. They taught me some of it. He came back, bouncing the ball. What's a word? Huh. You're feeling clever. Tell me what a word is. It's a unit of meaning. What's meaning? Uh, Meaning is an abstraction of characteristics common to the class of objects to which it applies. The meaning of ball is a set of characteristics common to balls, i.e. round and bouncy and often seen around guys in shorts. Jeremy returned to the free throw line, saying nothing. She figured she must have had that wrong, or at least not right enough. So you mean from a neurological perspective? Okay. A word is a recipe. A recipe for a particular neurochemical reaction. When I say ball, your brain converts the word into meaning, and that's a physical action. You can see it happening on an EEG. What we're doing, or I should say what you're doing, since no one has taught me any good words, is dropping recipes into people's brains to cause neurochemical reaction to knock out the filters, tie them up just long enough to slip an instruction past, and you do that by speaking a string of words crafted for the person's psychographic segment, probably words that were crafted decades ago and have been strengthened ever since. And it's a string of words because the brain has layers of defenses, and for the instruction to get through, they all have to be disabled at once. Jeremy said, How do you know this? Do you think I'm smart? I think you're scary, he said. While he showered, she waited outside on a wooden bench. From here she had a vantage point across the soccer fields to one of the parking lots, the one reserved for teachers, and she saw 4 black sedans roll up, one after the other. People in suits climbed out. She got off the bench and began to walk over, because this was curious, but one of the men turned to her, and she felt very cold and stopped. The people moved inside. She returned to the bench. Jeremy emerged, smelling of soap. Are you okay? She shook her head. I saw some people, poets, I guess. He looked at the cars. One was an older guy, white hair, tan skin. Oh, Jeremy said. Yeah, that's Yeats. The teachers, they're in there somewhere, you know? They're brick walls, but you can tell there's something behind that wall. This guy had shark eyes. Nothing in them, just eyes. She shook her head. Junkies get them if they're in a bad place. It freaked me out a little. Come to my room, he said. Hang out. Okay, because she wasn't ready to move yet. Seriously, don't worry about Yeats. You'll never speak to him. Why not? Because he's a million miles above us, Jeremy said. He's the head of the organization. Jeremy was going to graduate. She had known it was coming, but he became a senior, and she was no longer able to pretend the day belonged in some far-off future. He started begging off slushy runs. He didn't watch her play soccer anymore. Whenever she knocked on his door, he was deep in books, looking tired, making her feel stupid for bothering him. Just fail, she said. Stay another year. We'd be about the same level. We could even study together. I can't fail, Emily. She got off the bed, annoyed, because she had been only joking. Or maybe not, but still, she began sifting through his drawers, looking for anything interesting, but of course there was nothing because Jeremy Lattern had no personal effects, certainly no hidden words. She had looked a couple of times, just out of interest. It hadn't always been like this. She remembered a little toy robot with red arms. They had gotten rid of it sometime since she'd met him. That was what happened. That was what people did here. They shrunk and shrunk until there was nothing interesting left. She went over and put her hands on his shoulders. He tensed. Relax, it's a massage, therapeutic. She kneaded his muscles until they loosened. When she moved up his neck, he tightened again. Stop fighting it, I'm helping. He relaxed. She slid her fingers into his hair. She rubbed his neck with her thumbs. After a while, he put down his pen. It had been a while since he turned a page. She ran her fingernails lightly down his back. Take off your shirt so I can do your back. He didn't respond. She bit her lip. That had been kind of obvious. You can't focus if you're tense and distracted. You can't pretend you're not made of biology. She pressed her thumbs into his shoulders. You have a deficiency need. You satisfy it. That's Maslow. You can't move on to higher needs until you satisfy the base ones. He looked up at her. She said, I'd like to have sex with you if you want. His eyes were unreadable. Okay. She smiled, but he didn't, so she stopped that. He rose from the chair. He looked like he was concentrating on a puzzle. She unbuttoned his shirt. Her fingers shook, and he must have noticed. She felt his hands on her waist, and she pulled open his shirt, and his chest was smooth and hairless and smelled of him in a way that was powerful. She kissed his skin. She craned her neck to reach his lips, but he turned his face away, so there would be no kissing. He removed her jacket. She backed onto the bed, and he climbed on top of her. His face betrayed nothing. He was breathing more quickly, that was all. She tried to be like him, not react as his hand moved up her stomach, but a sound came out of her before she could stop it. His eyes flicked at her. I'm okay, she pulled him closer. She felt his against her and had a moment of panic. She wasn't a virgin, but it had been a long time, and everything was different. He continued to press. Her body fizzed with tiny stars, and she remembered how this went. She reached down and touched him and made him grunt. She liked that. She squeezed again. His hand sought admission to her skirt. She lifted her, unzipped, and pushed the whole mess of fabric down. His fingers pushed against her, and she gave a little gasp. He hesitated. She wanted to grab his hand and force him onto her. She tugged him out, and he buried his face in her shoulder. His fingers found her. It was an awkward angle she could only squeeze, but the pressure was amazing. Vibration began in her legs. Her teeth chattered. She almost laughed, but that would be no good. She couldn't do that. He groaned, a low warning, but she ignored it, and then he jetted through her fingers. He did it silently. She felt triumphant. The movement of his fingers intensified, and she felt herself going out with the tide of her victory. Her leg kicked once. She lay still. He panted into her hair. She could smell their sweat. After a minute, he raised his head. She could see the endorphins in his pupils. He rolled away onto his side. She used a corner of the sheet to clean herself and lay back beside him. He didn't speak. She watched the ceiling until his breathing eased into a sleep rhythm, about 20 or 30 minutes, and then, when it was safe, she put her arm around him. She went to class the next day, and no one knew. It was a secret treasure. She sat in the back row and thought, I had sex with Jeremy Lattern. It was subvisual methods, a class she liked, but her mind wandered. At odd times she seemed to catch his smell. Maybe some of him was still on her. She liked that idea. A thought popped into her head. He's a 13. She blinked. She didn't know where that had come from. She had considered Jeremy's segment before and decided he was probably a 94. His behavior matched up almost perfectly. She'd watched him pretty carefully. But now she felt differently. 94 was a cover. He was a 13. After classes, she decided to fetch him a slushie. He would be studying all afternoon and have no time for her. She knew that. She wouldn't bother him and wouldn't expect anything to be different, but she would fetch him a slushie. On the way out, she noticed Elliot's door was open. She hesitated. She hadn't seen him for months. Had he been looking forward to his next visit? But right now, she should probably avoid him because maybe Elliot could tell. But then he came out of his office and it was too late. Hey, she said. Busy? You look busy. Yes, leaving, but you can walk with me. Okay, she fell into step. They walked in silence. She transitioned from being worried that Elliot would figure out to disappointed that he hadn't. How's life? How's life? Yes. Life's good. Good. They passed a group of boys loitering with intent, who straightened and shifted. Elliot was well respected here. It was widely believed that he taught so rarely because he was usually required to be away doing mysterious and badass things. I was thinking about my name, my poet name, I mean, when I graduate. I decided I want to be Emily Dickinson. You can't be Dickinson. I could keep my first name, so all some little poems about death. She's literally the only poet I don't hate. We already have an Emily Dickinson. Also graduates aren't given the names of world-renowned poets, said Eliot. You'll be someone you've never heard of. Is there a list I can choose from? No. You guys are hard. They reached the front door and descended the steps. Well, see you around, he paused. You're happier. What? You seem happy. She shrugged. It's a beautiful day, Eliot. What do you want me to say? He didn't answer. You should get out more, she said. She walked away. He was going to call her back. She could feel it. He would know everything, but he didn't, and her tension eased, and by the time she reached the gate, she was humming. She purchased 2 slushies and almost got hit by a car running across the road while carrying them back. She balanced them in the crook of her arm and knocked on Jeremy's door. When he called out, she pushed the door open with her hip. Refreshment! He looked at the slushies. He wasn't as happy as she'd hoped. Thank you, Emily, she said. Thanks. She deposited the slushies on his desk and leaned herself against the wall. She had intended to give him the drink and go, but now she didn't want to. How's the study going? Slowly. She nodded. I'll leave you to it. Thanks. Unless you want a study break? She raised her eyebrows. That can't happen again. What can't happen? You know what. His voice dropped. We shouldn't have done it. I shouldn't have. Well, I forgive you. She tried to keep it light, and her heart was sinking through her stomach. She had seen this coming, hadn't she? She'd practically provoked it, but now she felt sick. If they knew I'd be expelled, we both would. Yes, but he tapped his book slightly with his fingers. This is my final exam. I can't F this up. She stared at him. You understand, right? I have to do this. I'm sorry. Are you? She said. I think you're a great person. She threw a slushie. It exploded on his head. Red juice and ice chips flying everywhere, splashing his books and papers. He sat frozen, dripping. She slammed the door on the way out. She ought soccer and she was in no mood for it. She stood rooted in the defensive half of the field and didn't chase. Shoshana on the opposing team concentrated her attacks on Emily's wing to capitalize on her apathy. Once she ran past while Emily just stood there, and after she scored, she ruffled Emily's hair. The next time Shoshana pounded toward her, the ball bubbling along in front of her, Emily decided to put Shoshana on the ground. She moved to intercept. Shoshana's face hardened in a way that told Emily to expect the shoulders. A word bubbled to Emily's lips, one of the attention words she had discovered in Shoshana's room. Kasonen. That was the word. It would be enough to kick Shoshana in the brain, just long enough for Emily to knock her flat, and she would use it because she had not used it on Jeremy, even though she could have because he was like Shoshana at 13. Kasonen. Her head was full of blood. Eat my shoulders. They collided. By the time Emily got up, Shoshana was jogging back to her half, doing the first pump. She had scored while Emily was on her butt. F, Emily said, and Shoshana laughed. She had to get away for a while, so instead of changing, she headed for the school gate. She was almost there when she heard footsteps. Jeremy was running after her. Wait! She didn't want to, but some small stupid part of her thought maybe he changed his mind. He caught her, breathing fast. He'd showered, put on a fresh shirt. His cheeks were pink. Let's not end things this way. What? We've been friends for 2 years. I don't... Gosh, she said. As soon as she heard the word friends, she walked. He trotted beside her. You can't tell anyone. She didn't answer. They will expel you. They've done it before. They'll send you effing home. Maybe you made me do it, she said. Maybe you took advantage of me with your words. He stopped. When she reached the gate, he yelled, How dare you? She flinched because there was fury in his voice. She kept walking. She wasn't going to accuse him of anything. Couldn't he tell her that? She just wanted him to feel something. Come back here. The traffic was flowing, but she threaded through it to the other side. A van honked. She turned to see Jeremy stranded outside the gates, his face red. You say nothing. Make me. He stepped onto the road. She was reminded of Benny in San Francisco, how he'd been funny and kind until she pushed him too far. Stop, she said. Jeremy knew her. He did know her segment. He was about to graduate, and he could make her do whatever he wanted. I'm sorry, I won't tell. He was halfway across, paused between lanes, his face thick with anger. He waited for a car, threw a glance to his right, and ran at her. She screamed, Kassonen! His head jerked. He stopped. For a moment, he was a child. Then he came back. She saw shock in his eyes and outrage and fear. She was transfixed by his face. Then a car swept him away. She shrieked and couldn't hear herself over the tires. She wanted to go to the hospital, but they wouldn't let her. She had to stay in the sitting room, the same place Charlotte had interviewed her when she'd first arrived, curled up in the same armchair. Finally, Elliot came in wearing a long coat. She opened her mouth to ask about Jeremy, but could see the answer on his face. She covered her face with her hands and cried, "Tell me what happened." She shook her head, not looking up. He crossed the rug and lifted her chin. "No," she said, and tried to cover her ears. He pulled away her hands and spoke, and her mind went away. When she returned to herself, he was sitting in the chair across the rug, his eyes dark. She closed her mouth and swallowed. Her throat felt sore. "Your time here is over," he said. "Please don't send me away. Please!" He stood. She began to cry again, but there was no pity in his eyes. He left. Killed student ran into traffic. Police say the student who was struck and killed by a vehicle on Monterbury Avenue on Friday was attempting to cross a busy road away from lights or crossings. The driver, a 39-year-old woman from Orange, was moving at or near the speed limit, police say. The incident is likely to reignite calls for lights or a crossing, as it has been the scene of several accidents. The area was again targeted for upgrade in the Department of Transportation's Pedestrian Safety Master Plan, but works were placed on hold last year due to local opposition. The student is believed to have been in his final year at an exclusive Williamsburg school. His name and the details have not been released. 2. Broken Hill. Odysseus, who had first avoided identifying himself and then given a false, impossible appellation, now supplies his real name in full. He is Odysseus, sacker of cities, son of Laertes, who lives in Ithaca. Odysseus's mention of his true name acts as a flash of illumination for the blind giant, who now comprehends an earlier prediction concerning his loss of sight. The enlightened Cyclops does not respond with stones this time, but with force of words. Polyphemus is able at long last to bend language to his needs, and he carefully repeats word for word Odysseus's name, epithet, patronym, and country of origin when he prays to his father Poseidon to punish him. Deborah Levine Guerra, Ancient Greek Ideas on Speech, Language, and Civilization. Posted 22 minutes ago. See conversation. Well, what happened is 2 weeks ago I went for a job interview and they turned around a laptop to face me and said, "Is this you?" And it was all this stuff I posted years ago. Pics of me passed out, drunk, long teenage rants about stupid crap, you know. So needless to say, no job. So before this interview, I delete everything. Delete Facebook, delete Twitter, anything I can find. I go in and the first thing they ask is, "Do I have Facebook?" I say no. They say, "How about a college page? LinkedIn? Anything?" I say no. They look at each other and say, well, their company likes to feel comfortable with their new hires' backgrounds, but I don't seem to have any. They're not saying I've done anything wrong, but when someone has no Facebook, it looks like they have something to hide. Seriously, you can't win. 1. The airplane climbed and Will waited for the chopper to shoot at them, or crash into them, or explode for no reason, who knew? But minutes passed with nothing but the drone of the engines and the night spreading out ahead. "Are we clear?" he asked from Tom or T.S. Eliot or whoever he was, and Eliot said nothing, but Will thought they were. Exhaustion dumped into him all at once. 1 minute he was in fear for his life, and the next he wanted to sleep. "I'm going to sit down, okay?" He made his way down to the plane. He reached seats and collapsed into one. He should buckle up. The buckles were so far away. He opened his eyes to daylight. The world bumped and shook. He clutched at the armrest, his head full of half-remembered dreams. A girl with bad words, a kangaroo. The engines were wailing. Beyond the round windows he saw snow and wooden fence posts, and these seemed very close and moving too fast. The note of the engines changed. They began to shed speed. The world slowed and stopped. Elliot emerged from the cockpit, flipped open a panel on the fuselage, and began to crank the door. "Where are we?" Elliot kept cranking. The door became a series of steps, and he trotted down them. Will got to his feet. He was not thrilled about heading out into the snow again, but he did it. Elliot stood at the side of the road, urinating. Will looked around. The blacktop stretched out as far as he could see. Power lines marched alongside. There was nothing else. "Nice landing," Will said. He got nothing from Elliot but a steady stream of urine. "Where are we?" Elliot sipped and walked a short distance down the road. Will went after him. The plane was very modern, he noticed, sleek and clean with upturned wings. It was surprisingly large, too, although maybe that was because it was on a road where it did not belong. He stopped beside Elliot. He stuffed his hands into his pockets, his breath fogged. What now? Next car that comes along, I'm catching a ride. Then I'm going to get some breakfast. Bacon, ideally. Lots of bacon. Will shook snow from his boots. Okay. That's me, though. You can do whatever you like. Will squinted. Say what? We're done. This is it. You go your own way. I go mine. What? It's over. But the poets. Wolf. Does she still want to kill me? Oh, yes. So we have to hide. Go to more of your friends. There are no more friends. Will stared. No? No. You mean your entire what? Resistance or whatever got wiped out yesterday? Everyone? Yes. You don't have a cell in another city or no? Will exhaled. Then we need to stick together. Elliot said. She's coming after you too, right? Wolf wants you dead? Yes. So? So from your point of view, I'm a guy who can keep you alive, but from my point of view, you're useless. You don't help me at all. You said I was important. You have to find out why I'm immune to the words. That was before, Elliot said. Circumstances changed. I'm coming with you, said Will. Wherever you're going, I'm coming. No, you're not. You can't stop me. The word voodoo. It doesn't work on me, right? So how do you think you're going to... Elliot produced a pistol. He didn't seem to pull it from anywhere. He just suddenly had it. Will's eyes stung. See? Elliot put away the gun. There were all kinds of persuasion. He gazed at the horizon again. Will's breath steamed. Okay. Anger built inside of him, and he didn't know what to do with it. Fine, that's how it is? He walked back to the plane. He didn't know what he was doing, but he could do it somewhere warm. He could do that. Halfway up the steps, he yelled, What happened in Broken Hill? Wolf killed everyone, right? Elliot didn't move. Yeah, so you go hide out while she does what she likes to the rest of us. You do that. He shivered. He stomped up the steps. Elliot stood on the road, scanning the horizon. His coat flapped around his legs. Will would pop back out of the plane in about 5 minutes by his estimation. That would be the point at which his fear of being abandoned surpassed his psychological desire for warmth. It would be useful if a car appeared before them. That way, Elliot could compromise the driver and be on his way without ever seeing Will again. The wind stung his cheeks. He couldn't resist the comparison any longer. The last time he'd stood like this, waiting and watching to see what came over the horizon, carrying a gun and hoping not to need it, a little over a year ago, he had been outside Broken Hill. He put the air conditioning on full, but it made no difference. The sun blasted through the windshield, broiling him inside his shirt. The kid he'd collected from the airport, Campbell, squirmed and twisted his tie and finally pulled off the linen jacket and hung it over the back of his seat. The sun looks bigger, he said. Can it actually be bigger? It's the ozone, said Elliot. There's a hole. Do you get used to it? Not yet. When I left D.C., it was 12 degrees, said the kid, rolling up his sleeves. 12. He glanced at Elliot. You miss D.C.? I visit. Yeah, but the kid looked out of the window at the blasted soil rolling by. How long have you been out there in total? 3 months? 7. Yeah, the kid nodded. Of course, well, after this you can go home. He smiled. Elliot looked at him. How old are you? 21. Why? How much do you know about what you're doing? Everything, the kid laughed. Elliot, I'm fully briefed. I've spent 6 weeks in intensive prep. I was selected for my talents. I know what I'm doing. Elliot said nothing. 4 months ago, Virginia Woolf releases a bear word in Broken Hill, Australia. Population 3,000, now population 0. Official story, explosion in the ore refinery plant, causing a catastrophic toxic leak. Town is fenced off at a radius of 5 miles. Scary signs promise death to all who enter. The funny part is, the signs don't lie. We send people in, they don't come out, hence the theory that the word is still in there. He pulled his shirt out of his pants and flapped air. Crazy idea, isn't it? That a word can persist, hang in the air like an echo? It can't. What then? Because something bad is in there and it ain't a toxic leak. He almost didn't say it. Maybe Wolf. Said the kid. Yeah, nobody really thinks that's plausible, Elliot. We're all pretty sure Wolf's dead. He tapped idly on the window. We have satellite on that town. We've imaged 100 different ways. Nothing moves. Elliot drove in silence. I'm the best there is defensively, said the kid. I mean, not to boast, but that's why I'm here. I was selected because I can't be compromised. There's not going to be a problem. You realize you're betting your life on that. I realize it. Elliot glanced at him. 21, he thought. Who chose you? Yeats? I have had the honor of speaking with Yeats, yes. You don't have to do this. The kid looked at him. Give me a sign, Elliot thought, and we'll blow right by Broken Hill, Campbell. Keep going until we reach an airport. By sundown, we'll be a country away. You ever think about quitting, Campbell? Just walking away? And let me ask you something else. Have you noticed there's something wrong with Yeats? Like something dead? Notice that? The kid turned away. You've been in the desert too long, Elliot. He watched the endless road. You're right about that, he said. He drove up to the chain-link fence and killed the engine. They sat in the silence, looking at the signs. Contamination, toxic, trespass, death. Skulls in thick red lines, the heat pressed in like a hint. They're words, aren't they? Said the kid. Fear words. He unbuckled. I need to get out of this car. Outside was no cooler, but at least the air was moving, stirring dust and sand. The road was blocked with a snarl of razor wire. To the left and right, the chain-link fence stretched away, signs flapping every few hundred feet. A few scrubby bushes protruded from the red soil. This continued as far as one could see. He had wire cutters in the trunk just in case, but nothing had changed since the last time. The wire looped across the road was not secured. It didn't need to be. The kid was right. It was the words that kept people out. Elliot dragged the wire for the road. The kid was trying to wrap his linen jacket around his head. I have a hat in the back, said Elliot. Take that. I'm okay. Take the hat. He opened the back door and retrieved the cap and a bottle of water. Fine, thanks. The kid jammed the cap on his head. The peak said, the thunder from down under. Elliot had picked it up from a street vendor in Adelaide. How do I look? You have a satellite phone? Yep. Call me. It works. I checked at the airport. I'll call you when I get into town. Call me now. The kid produced his phone and poked at it. Elliot's phone trilled. Okay, said the kid. You have a backup battery? I do. And your main is full? It's fine. Is it full? Look. The kid showed him the screen. See the little battery? I know how to use a phone. Call me as soon as you can no longer see me clearly. Then keep the line open. If the call drops, keep trying me until you get through. Will do. What's your segment? What? Is it 93? The kid's face blinked. It was how they trained them. The kid was thinking about something else, something happy, something sad, something traumatic, only he knew. It was supposed to make him unreadable, by adding noise to his facial expression. You're a 93. Crap, said the kid. You're not supposed to do that. Why'd you do that? For your protection. It doesn't matter. I can't be compromised. You want to try me? Go ahead. Elliot considered it. He didn't doubt that the kid was good, but he'd probably done most of his work in a relatively controlled environment. If Elliot jumped him, put a gun to his mouth, screamed words, well, that was not the same. Don't worry about me, said the kid. I'm good to go. Don't take any risks. Anything looks wrong, don't investigate. Just walk away. We don't have to do everything today. The kid adjusted his down-under cap. He thought Elliot was crazy, of course. Well, I'm going to do this. Elliot nodded. Good luck. Heh, said the kid. Thanks. He stepped around the razor wire and began to walk up the road. With distance, the kid's body shimmered in the heat haze, rising out of the blacktop. Soon he was hard to make out at all, just another twisting current of air. Elliot stood with a hand shielding his face from the sun, watching. His cell phone rang. Thanks for the cap, said the kid. Glad I've got it now. You're welcome. I have seriously never been this hot. Can you see the town's outskirts? Not yet. Should be close. Yeah, I know. I have the maps by heart. They fell silent. The sun beat down on Elliot's head. He should retreat to the car in a few minutes. He would wait until the kid reached into the town. Used to teach her at the academy, Virginia Woolf. That's what I heard. Is that true? The kid was panting a little. We have to spend an hour on the phone, Elliot. May as well talk. He blew air. This is so ridiculously hot. Elliot heard him take a swig from the water bottle. Yes, I taught Wolf. Did you see it coming? At all, I mean? Did you ever get the sense she might what? Go ballistic, said the kid. Kill a whole town? I don't mean to insult your observation skills, which are clearly very good. I just wonder how you can miss something like that, you know? It wasn't just you, it was everyone. We're supposed to know people. There's a risk in trading anyone. In Wolf's case, her potential seemed to justify it. He shrugged, although there was no one to see him. We were wrong. I never met her. She'd left by the time I started, he coughed. She'd been kicked out, banished, whatever. It's really dusty. The wind, I think I can see the refinery. Keep your eyes open. The kid laughed, which turned into another cough. Seriously, you're making me nervous for no reason. There's nobody in here. Elliot said nothing. Do you know what I do? In the organization? I'm in digital, web services, you know. Not really. You should. This is where everything is wrong. Let me tell you about it. Bring you up to speed. Fine, he said. Well, don't humor me. I don't care. I'm just offering you an inside look at what Yeats himself has called, quote, the greatest attack vector since print, end quote. Fine. The organization is changing, Elliot. It's not newspapers and TV anymore. That stuff is old school, obsolete, and you older guys, if you don't watch out, you'll be obsolete with it. You don't want to be obsolete, do you? No. No. So let me help you out, the kid panted a while. The key to the web is it's interactive. That's the difference. Online, someone visits your site. You can have a little poll there. It says, hey, what do you think about the tax cuts? And people click and segment themselves. First advantage right there. You're not just proselytizing. speaking into the void. You're getting data back. But here's the really clever part. Your site isn't static, it's dynamically generated. Do you know what that means? No. It means the site looks different to different people. Let's say you chose the poll option that said you're in favor of tax cuts. Well, there's a cookie on your machine now. And when you look at the site again, the articles are about how the government is wasting your money. The site is dynamically selecting content based on what you want. I mean, not what you want, what will pee you off. What will engage your attention and reinforce your beliefs and make you trust the site? And you said you were against tax cuts. We'll show you stories of Republicans blocking social programs or whatever. It works every which way. Your site is made of mirrors, reflecting everyone's thoughts back at them. That's pretty great, right? It's great. And we haven't even started talking about keywords. This is just the beginning. Third major advantage, people who use a site like this tend to ramp up their dependence on it. Suddenly, all those other news sources, the ones that aren't framing every story in terms of the user's core beliefs, they start to seem confusing and strange. They start to seem biased, actually, which is kind of funny. So now you got a user who not only trusts you, you're his major source of information on what's happening in the world. Boom, you own that guy. You can tell him whatever you like and no one's contradicting you. The kid sucked in his breath. Oh crap, what is it? I think I see a body. You didn't know there would be bodies? I knew, of course I knew, but knowing and seeing are two, oh geez, that's disgusting. They've been in the sun for 4 months. Yeah, clearly. Is it just bone or? It's mostly bone, said the kid. That's the disgusting part. For a while, Elliot heard nothing but his breathing. Yuck, they're all over. You were telling me about digital. How do you think they died? His voice sounded muffled, as if he was talking through his sleeve. Did the bear word blow out their effing brains? Like aneurysms? Because it doesn't look like they died from aneurysms. Why not? They're in clumps, like they dragged themselves into groups, then died. Elliot was silent. So, yeah, digital, the kid's voice wavered. Fourth advantage, we can whisper. A problem with old media has always been that we can't control who's watching. There's self-selection. People don't tune in for shows that rub against their beliefs, but you still get people from the wrong segment watching. And they think you're peddling bullcrap, of course, because you are, and sometimes they make a big deal out of that, and it feeds back to the target segment. And then you have a message bleeding. In digital, that problem goes away. You can say things to a user and no one else can hear because it's dynamically generated for that user. The next user, the site looks different. End result, you get people from different segments and they agree on nothing, literally nothing, except the site is a great source of unbiased information. He took a breath. I'm passing houses, flat, ugly houses. Are you okay? Yeah, fine, just hot. Take a rest if you need it. Why do you think they're in groups? I don't know. You think they could be families? Like they had time to find their loved ones? Maybe. I don't think that's it. Something about the way, I don't know. But I don't think so. Something scraped against the phone. I need a drink. Rest. The kid gulped water. No, I want to get this done. Time passed. So, that's digital. Pretty great, huh? It makes me wonder why we're bothering with anything else. Yeah. Well, we have a problem with unidentified users. Someone visits our site for the first time and we have no idea who they are. We don't know what to show them. We can make guesses based on where they are geographically, and the software they're using. But that's suboptimal. We're getting better. You know about social networking? No. You need to get into this stuff, Elliot. It's the future. Everyone's making pages for themselves. Imagine 100 million people clicking polls and typing in their favorite TV shows and products and political learnings day after day. It's the biggest data profile ever, and it's voluntary. That's the funny part. People resist a census, but give them a profile page, and they'll spend all day telling you who they are, which is good for us, obviously. What is it? There's it's okay. What is it? Gas station, places burned out, cars all over, and one is upside down. That's, not bad, Elliot? A word that can flip cars? He laughed, the pitch high. That's some pretty effing impressive neurolinguistics, wouldn't you say? Are there bodies? Of course there are bodies. I'm effing knee-deep in bodies. Just assume there are bodies unless I tell you otherwise. Understood. He panted. I'm not knee-deep. I'm sorry, I'm exaggerating, but there are a lot. A real lot. He swallowed over and over. How could there be so many? I mean, what did she do? How did she kill everyone? Take a break. F. Campbell, you need to calm down. I can see a hospital. It's just up the road that's effing full of bodies. You can come back. You don't need to do this today. The kid shook a shaky breath. Yeah, I do, Elliot. It's not that important. Forget about Yeats. There was a snuffling sound. Eventually, Elliot identified it as laughter. You have definitely been away too long, Elliot. No question. Forget about Yeats. He sucked air. There's a lot of damage here. Cars on the sidewalk. I saw this on satellite pictures, but up close it's more real, I guess. On the computer, they just look badly parked, like everyone was in a real hurry, but they hid things. They're all somewhere for a reason. He swallowed. Almost at the hospital looks smaller than I expected, actually, like a library. I can see the entrance to the ER, ambulance out front. I mean a van, a paramedic van, up on the curb. Front of the ER is all glass. But I can't see inside. He heard the kid stop. It's real dark in there. Or grimy or something. He hesitated. I'm going around to the main entrance, okay? Okay. It's just, I don't think I need to mess with this black room if there's another way in. Agreed. Okay, I'm coming up on the main doors. Crap, I don't even know if this is better. Tell me what you see. Bodies, desiccated bodies piled against the glass, but I can see inside at least. I'm at the doors. There's... What? He waited. Campbell? There's a sound. What kind of sound? I don't know. Shut up a second. Let me listen. Time passed. Like a hum? A person? No, like a machine. Something electronic. But that can't be right. There's no power here. It's not that loud. I'm going to open the doors. There was a scraping. He heard the kid gagging. Effing H! What is it? The smell! Stop where you are. Okay, I've stopped. Look around. Tell me everything. Seats, reception desk, crap on the walls. Crap? I mean stuff, ads, get your vaccinations, 8 out of 10 mothers experience postnatal depression. When was your last prostate exam? What about the sound? Oh yeah, it's flies. 10 billion flies. Stand there a minute. Time passed. She's not here, Elliot, I told you. If there was anything bigger than a squirrel moving around in here, we'd know it. Rabbit. There are no squirrels in Australia. No, the kid broke out in laughter. No squirrels? Are you crapping me? No. Well, maybe I'll effing move here. It's starting to seem like effing paradise. Keep it together. The kid's breathing came harsh and ragged. You're right, he steadied. I'm going in. There was a scrape. The ambient noise altered, thickening. I'm inside. Tell me everything. There are lines on the floor, colored lines. Man, well, I guess I'll follow the red one for emergency. There are so many bodies, it's hard to avoid them. I am never getting the smell off me. Shuffling. Doors are propped open with bodies. I'm in a corridor. It's getting darker. The lights don't work. Just confirming that. There's what? There's a skull with an axe in it. An axe? Yeah, a red axe for fighting fires. I can see where someone's pulled it out of the case. Someone broke the glass and took an axe out and buried it in this dude's head. Hey, Elliot? Yes. I'm taking the axe, okay? I feel better if I had it with me. So I'm going to put down the phone for a minute to pick up the axe. Okay. The phone went clunk. He heard him grunting, then a brief squeal. You there? I'm here. I got it, the kid laughed. I just pulled an axe out of a skull. He exhaled. I feel better. I feel kind of... Hey, I just had an idea. I'm going to take a picture of this crap and send it to you. On your phone? Yeah. Can you do that without ending the call? Not sure. Then don't do that. I'll send it and call you right back. Do not hang up on the phone. Okay. Just an idea. I can see the doors to the emergency up ahead. Double doors. Lots of... Oh, I figured out what this black stuff on the walls is. Blood. Yeah, lots and lots of blood. A pause. Is that... Yeah, that's them. Who? An extraction team. I know these guys. I saw their video. You know these people in black suits Yeats uses sometimes? The soldiers with the goggles? They're supposed to be screened against compromise. Yes. It's them. Some of them, anyway. They're not wearing their goggles. They're pretty messed up. How? They're tangled in each other. Their faces are black, dried blood. They don't have any eyes. I don't know if that's decomposition or what. His voice shook. They look like they went through a effing shredder, Elliot. He realized the kid was crying. Campbell? But they weren't poets. That's the difference. I'm the king of defense. Come back. You can report in what you've learned. Try again tomorrow. No. Yeats can wait another. The kid's voice rose. Elliot, you have no effing idea what's required, okay? You've been in the effing desert and you don't know. I'm not telling Yeats I got this far and left. That is not effing happening. And if you had half a clue, you wouldn't suggest it. Not all of us agree with Yeats. The kid sucked air a while. I could have your head, Elliot. I could have your head on a plate for what you just said to me. I know that. Yeah. Seconds passed. Doors ahead, closed double doors. Sign says emergency. Campbell, please. I want to hold the axe in 2 hands. I'm going to wedge the phone under my ear. There was a scraping. His breath came in gulps. Hey, Elliot? Yes. I appreciate it, saying that about Yeats. It's good of you. Campbell, please stop. Command words rose in his mind. Weak, over the phone, probably pointless. If anything goes wrong, I want you to tell Yeats I was cool under pressure, said the kid. I'm opening the. There was a squeal of hinges. What do you see? The kid's breathing. Campbell, what do you see? Talk to me. The phone barked into his ear. He jerked it away. By the time he brought it back, there was nothing but dead air. It had hit the floor, he thought. That was the other noise. The kid had dropped it. He thought he heard a faint squeak. The kid's shoes? Campbell? He said the kid's name again and again and again, but there was nothing. Elliot waited against the car as the sun settled behind him and the heat bled from the air. He didn't expect the kid to return, but he was giving him the chance. Why are you here, Elliot? You see where the organization is going. You know it's coming. Yet here you stand. In an hour it would be dark. Then he would climb into the car, drive 4 hours to this hotel, and phone Yeats. He would tell him Campbell had not come back, keeping his voice empty, and Yeats would express his sorrow in the same tone. Emily, Emily, he thought. Where did you go? Something shimmered on the road. He squinted. The haze had lifted, but the wind blew dust into his eyes. Then he was sure someone was coming. Elliot straightened. He raised a hand. The figure didn't respond. There was something odd about the way it was moving. Its gait was lopsided. Not Campbell? But it had to be. There was no one else out there. A minute passed. The haze condensed into Campbell. The reason he was lopsided was that he was carrying an axe. Elliot returned to the car, opened the glove compartment, and retrieved his gun. By the time he returned to the fence line, Campbell was 200 yards away. Elliot could see his expression, his focused emptiness. He stuck the pistol into his waistband and cupped his hands around his mouth. Campbell, stop! The kid kept coming. His shirt was soaked with sweat. Wet, matted hair poked from beneath the thunder from down under cap. He had lost a shoe. Campbell dropped the axe. For a moment he thought the kid was obeying, but no. He was hefting the axe over his shoulder, 50 yards, close enough to smell. Vested for sache rentre valo, stop! The kid shambled through the words like they were water. Elliot drew the gun. Stop, Campbell, stop! Valo, stop, valo! The kid's lips stretched back. The tendons along his forearms tightened. The axe rose. Elliot squeezed the trigger. The kid grunted. His expressions didn't change. Elliot pulled the trigger twice more. The axe clinged to the blacktop. The kid fell to his knees. He tried to rise, grunted again, and fell face forward onto the road. Elliot sank to his haunches. The sun had almost set. The world was awash in orange. He rose and began to load the kid's body into the car. He buried the kid in the desert and drove through the night. When the city lights rose, he couldn't stand it anymore and pulled over onto the shoulder and climbed out. He leaned on the car and dialed, inhaling night air. Cars whizzed by. Yes, it's Elliot. Ah, he heard a tinkling, ice and glass. How are things proceeding? Campbell's dead. He heard Yeats sip at his drink. Do you mean he failed to return? I mean I shot him in the chest. He closed his eyes, but that was no better. So he opened them again. I mean, he came out of there carrying an axe, and I shot him. You sound unsettled. He dropped the phone from his ear. When he could, he raised it. I'm fine. You're saying Campbell came back insane, is that correct? Yes, insane, compromised, something. Do you know how it happened? He made it to the emergency room. We were talking. Then he just stopped. How did he sound up to that point? He was cool under pressure. There was silence. It's so intriguing, Yeats said. What I would give to know what she did in there. He waited. Come home, Ellie. It's been long enough. I haven't found Wolf. Wolf is dead. I don't believe that. Stop believing what you want to believe. It's unbecoming. You've found no trace. Your assignment is terminated. Come home. He laid his head against the cold metal of the car and closed his eyes. Yes, sir. A dot appeared in the snowscape. A car? Yes. Elliot checked his coat, made sure the gun was out of sight. Behind him, Will's footsteps clattered down the airplane steps. That was quick, Elliot thought. He must have thought of something. What happened to being worth it? Will shouted. Is that what you said to me? Those people who died back there, I had to make myself worth it? Elliot didn't answer. Is that a car? Will's shoes crunched toward him. He stopped beside Elliot, hugging himself. Elliot glanced at him. Don't leave me, you mother effer, Will said. Fine. What, so we're good? We're staying together? Yes. Then what the etch was that before? Was that a joke? The car slowed. Elliot saw glassed-in faces gaping at the plane. This will be easier if you're calm. Are you effing with me right now? I'm trying to deal with magical killer poets and you're effing with me? I reconsidered, Elliot said. You made a good point. He walked toward the car. Ghost Towns. Number 8, Broken Hill, Australia. Following discovery of the world's richest zinc-lead ore deposit in 1883, Broken Hill became one of the world's largest mining towns. At its peak, up to 30,000 residents lived here, many employed by the Broken Hill Proprietary Company, BHP. Following exhaustion of two primary mines in the 1970s, however, the town began to decline. Several smaller mine sites remained viable, but isolation, the nearest city is 300 miles away, and the inhospitable environment contributed to a steady fall in population. In the early afternoon of 14 August 2011, the zinc-lead refinery, situated near the heart of the town, experienced a catastrophic explosion, followed by a rapid hot-burning fire. Reports suggest a river of deadly methyl isocarbonate flowed down the main street. Within the next few hours, all 3,000 residents died from toxic fumes. Several emergency services teams that entered the town in the ensuing hours were likewise overcome. The town is currently fenced off at a radius of 5 miles and expected to remain uninhabitable for the next 200 years. I'm going to type in the site of this, but it might not bring up anything. Oh, it does come up. Okay. Read Broken Hill Conspiracies. What people don't realize about Broken Hill is a lot of the people didn't die from fumes at all, at least not directly. It was the panic when they realized what was happening and couldn't get out. My uncle was on the first perimeter team, and he said people were killing each other in there. 2. She sat in a red leather armchair and watched a fish. The fish was in a tall hourglass with water instead of sand. Every few seconds a drop fell from the top to the bottom of the plink. She could hear only because the room was a mausoleum. The fish wandered around, ballooning as it approached the curved sides and shrinking away as it neared the center. It didn't seem to care that its world was shrinking one drop at a time. Maybe it was used to it. When the water level was low enough, the hourglass must tilt, swing the fish to the bottom, and start refilling one drop at a time. Some kind of art, she assumed. It was installed in the middle of this room with no other function. It had to be. It was making some point about the time or rebirth. She didn't know. She shouldn't be thinking about fish anyway. She was in a situation. Charlotte had driven her, deposited her in this room, and clacked off into the depths. Charlotte had not spoken during any of this, not one word, even though Emily tried to provoke her. There was this disturbing softness about Charlotte this morning, a kind of sympathy in her silence which Emily did not like at all. She wished Jeremy were here. She wished there was some possibility of this day ending in this room, not telling him about it. "You would not believe this fish hourglass I had," she'd say, and Jeremy wouldn't say anything, but she would be able to tell he was interested. Her time at the school was over. That was what Elliot had said, but no one had made her leave. They'd put her in a different room, and in the morning a fresh school uniform was hanging on the door. Then Charlotte, soft and silent. Emily didn't know how to reconcile all this. She was giving serious consideration to running. Many problems, Emily knew, could be solved in running. She was not exactly sure which led to the street, since she had arrived here via an elevator from the underground garage, but still, it was worth keeping in mind as an option. She stared at the hourglass. Plink, plink. She couldn't see a tilting mechanism, but it must move soon, because the water level was getting pretty low. She heard heels and identified them as Charlotte's. It was her last chance to flee, and she let it pass. Charlotte emerged and crossed the room without looking at her. She opened a door and waited. Emily rose. "Are we leaving?" Charlotte did not respond. She looked at Emily, and her eyes made Emily felt like she had made a mistake not running, but it was too late for that. She would get out of here one way or another. She always did. "Okay," she said, and went through the door. Charlotte took her to a stairwell, and finally to a door marked roof. She opened this, and Emily stepped out into the sunshine. The roof was maybe 100 yards to a side, with gardens and a pool and a tennis court, like a floating resort, and she could see other rooftops floating in the sky around her. They were all the exact same height, because this was Washington. She marveled at this for a moment, and the door clacked shut behind her. She turned, and Charlotte was gone. She said. She began to explore the gardens. There was a noise like shock. Following this, she came upon a man in light gray pants, no jacket, standing with his back to her, straddling a green mat. His knees were slightly bent. He was holding a golf club. She stood very still because, even from here, she could tell it was Yeats, the man Jeremy had promised her she'd never have to speak to, who had shark eyes. He swung the club, shook, and a golf ball arced into the air. She watched it, thinking it was going to land on one of the other buildings, but they were farther away than it seemed. The ball fell below the horizon of the low rooftop wall. That would be kind of dangerous by the time it reached ground level, she felt, kind of like a bullet. Yeats turned to her. To her enormous relief, he was wearing sunglasses. He almost looked normal, or not normal, but like a politician, a congressman or senator, someone who might tell her country needed cleaning up. More solid than normal. He wasn't smiling, but it didn't seem angry either. He was just looking at her. "Hi," she said. He took a white cloth and began to clean the end of his club. This took a while, and his eyes didn't move from her as far as she could tell. She shifted from one foot to the other. "Charlotte brought me here, but Vartix velcor menik wisik. Be still." Her mouth snapped closed. It happened before she realized she was doing. The surprise was that it felt like her decision. She really genuinely wanted to be still. It was the words, Yeats compromising her, she knew, but it didn't feel like that at all. Her brain was spinning with rationalizations, reasons why she should definitely be still right now, why that was a really good move, and it was talking in her voice. She hadn't known compromise was like this. Yeats took a golf ball from a basket and dropped it to the green mat. He positioned himself, raised the club. He struck the ball and watched it sail into the distance. When it disappeared, he returned it to the basket and did it again. He wasn't watching where the balls landed, she noticed. It was like he was talking to some kind of perverse joy in turning golf balls into bullets. It was more like he didn't care. She had misjudged this whole situation. She had thought it was going to be about her. That hourglass in the lobby, she realized, that didn't tilt. It was someone's job to come by twice a day and replace the fish. Yeats continued to hit balls, and she fought to move but didn't. She felt violated and angry, but also ashamed that she couldn't control her own body. It was humiliating. It was making her reevaluate her relationship with herself. Breathe fast, she told herself, because that would be like being still, but not exactly. She had to find a place to drive in a wedge and work from there. Breathe. Yeats' head turned to her. What he was thinking, she had no idea, but she had the feeling that the golfing part was over. He returned his club to the bag and lowered himself into a wrought iron chair and began to untie his shoelaces. He did this with great care, as if his shoes contained secrets. When this was done, he entered a black glossy pair. Business shoes. Shoes for business. He laced them firmly and stood headed toward her. She breathed. She could force a tiny amount of air between her teeth, making a hiss she could barely hear. That was it. Yeats removed his sunglasses and tucked them into his shirt pocket. His eyes were gray and characterless as stone. There was a flatness to his face. She'd have suspected a facelift if it wasn't crazy for a poet to reveal a mental weakness for vanity. Maybe he wanted to erase his expressions, or maybe he was just like this. If you never smiled or laughed or frowned, she could believe that this was the kind of face you wound up with, smooth and empty as an undisturbed pond. He unbuttoned his cuffs and began to roll up his shirt sleeves. He was close enough to scratch or bite or kick, but she couldn't do any of that, of course. "He is going to kill you," she shrieked at herself. But it made no difference. Her brain had become very fatalistic. It knew she was responsible for Jeremy, and it was hard to argue that she didn't deserve everything she got. Yeats folded his hands and closed his eyes. For long seconds he did not move. She thought, is he praying? Because that was what it looked like. He couldn't be, because the idea of a religious poet was even more ridiculous than a vain one. Belief in God was a mental weakness, revealing a need for a sense of belonging and higher purpose, desires poets were supposed to master. They were taught this. There were potential avenues of attack. They advertised your segment. But Yeats was giving every indication of communicating with a higher power. Her heart thumped painfully. There was nothing about this situation she understood. "Sss," she said. His eyes opened. "Goodness," he said. She thought he was mocking her, but maybe not. His eyes searched hers. She felt surveyed, as if by engineers, dispassionately, precisely, with instruments. "I was told your discipline was poor," he said, "but this—" Moments passed. She could see his nostrils flaring in and out. She said, "Sss. You are supposedly gifted. You possess an aptitude for attack considered sufficient to offset your deficiencies in defense, but I would see this, because presently, my dear, I have trouble imagining how this could be true. I will allow you one opportunity to speak to me. Use it to convince me why I should keep you. Vartix velcor menic wisic, you may speak." Her throat loosened. She coughed to prove it. She said, "Ugh." It felt good to make that sound. Yeats waited patiently. It would take 1/8 of an argument to convince him of anything, she thought. She had been in situations like this where people said, "Convince me," and in none of those had they actually wanted to be convinced. She could lay down a perfect argument, and they just invented new bullcrap on the spot to justify what the answer was still no. When people said, "Convince me," she knew it didn't mean they had an open mind. It meant they had the power and they wanted to enjoy it in a minute. She didn't know if this was true of Yeats. She didn't feel that she could talk her way out of this. Why should Yeats keep her? She was after, she knew. She was nothing but trouble. "Fenelt," she said. "Rastin." These were attention words, which she collected from other students. It was incredibly unlikely they would do anything for Yeats. She didn't even know his segment. If she fluked one, he was no doubt capable of shrugging off anything a student could manage. "Thrillance." "Malinto." He didn't react. Didn't so much as flinch. "Die," she said, which was kind of stupid, but she was out of words, and she wanted it very much. "Die, you flat F." Enough. Her mouth closed. Words clogged her throat, bobbing up and down. They tasted hot, like bile. Yeats looked at her a while. She couldn't read him. She didn't know whether she had lived or died. "I have a name for you," he said. "When the time is right." He walked away. She heard him reach the door, but couldn't turn her head. "You may move in a while." Some time passed. A bird landed near the golf clubs and began to hop hopefully around the little green mat. She breathed. Her chest loosened one muscle at a time. That was how she got herself back, filament by filament. She had survived somehow. She was still here. She was collected by a woman she had seen once before, stepping out of a black town car alongside Yeats, that time had visited the school. She didn't introduce herself as Emily already knew her name as Plath. She had asked. Plath was all cheekbones and elbows and gave Emily the feeling that she would push her in front of a train for a nickel. She had cruel shoes and a phone, and looked at Emily in a way that reminded her of being stepped over on a San Francisco sidewalk on a bad day. "Can you move?" Plath said. "Yes." Plath beckoned. Emily followed. There were stairs, and then she was in a parking garage. A car Emily knew well was there, and her heart leaped. It was the first moment she had truly believed she was getting out of here. She looked at Plath, and Plath said nothing, and so Emily walked to the car. Its engine turned over. She opened the passenger door, and inside was Elliot. "Hi," she said. She wanted to kiss him. Elliot didn't speak, but he looked at her, and she knew she was safe. He was still angry with her, of course, but he was not dangerous. She could relax in a car with Elliot. When the car exited the garage into bright sunshine, she closed her eyes. Somewhere in the snarl of streets, she fell asleep. She opened her eyes and was somewhere else. "Where are we?" She saw a road sign. "Are we going to the airport?" Elliot flicked on the turn signal. The car drifted toward a lane marked departures. "Hey," she said. "Elliot, Yeats said I could still be a poet. He tested me and I passed. I don't have to go away." It was like talking to a wall. "Elliot, I can go back to the school." He pulled alongside the curb and took something from the seat pocket. "This is your passport. This is your confirmation number." A blue booklet with a white business card tucked inside. The card had a string of letters and numbers in blue ink above. "Tom Elliot, research analyst. Use the machines inside to check in. Talk to Yeats, Elliot. Call Yeats. He'll tell you." "These are his instructions." She stared. "But I passed." "It's temporary," Elliot said. "You can come home in a few years." "Years?" She said. "Years? Please appreciate that this is the best possible outcome." "No, Elliot, please." He wouldn't look at her, so she put her hand on his arm. He didn't say anything. He didn't move. Eventually, she understood that this was final. "Well," she said, "bye then. Your bag is in the trunk." "Thanks." She opened the door. It was difficult, as if everything had gotten heavy. Her hands were numb. She dragged herself from the car. Elliot said, "If you work hard and discipline yourself, you can conceivably return and..." She shut the door on the rest. First the red-eye from D.C. to Los Angeles, 6 hours. She landed at dawn and spent half a day moving the 200 yards from domestic arrivals to international departures. She hadn't slept in the air, so she curled up in a seat, but there were families and kids vibrating at high frequency and men with booming laughs. A younger couple discussed in-flight movies in a flat, broad accent. She was going to Australia. Her boarding passes told her so. We should get Lord of the Rings, said the man. Lord, she thought. Lord of the Rings. They sent convicts to Australia, right? It had been a penal colony, a place of banishment. The desk called for first and business class passengers, and she trudged to the gate. When she surrendered her boarding pass, though, the woman smiled and handed it back to her. We'll be boarding economy in a few moments. Emily looked at her dumbly. She had just assumed. She walked back to the seats. Nice try, said the man beside her, the one hoping for Lord of the Rings. He was friendly, and she smiled back, and it was the most fake thing she had ever done. She slept fitfully, disturbed by rattling food trolleys and people squeezing by her seat. The flight time, according to her screen, was 14 hours, which she thought had to be wrong. Like maybe that was including time difference. She didn't know enough to sleep properly. Somewhere over the Pacific, a flight attendant bent to her ear. Excuse me, this is for you. Emily, tangled in dreams of golf and yeats, stared at the woman without comprehension. It was night time. The only light came from the screens in the backs of people's seats and the little yellow glow lights embedded in their aisles. The woman handed Emily a folded piece of paper. It was an odd texture, thick, stamped with Aviation Authority logo. Thank you, Emily said. The attendant left and she unfolded the paper. Emily, you are to live in Broken Hill, Australia. This is to be your home until you are called for. No preparations have been made. You are to use your own resources. You can do this. Elliot. She put the paper away and pulled her knees to her chest and silently cried into them. If she were at school, she wouldn't have been able to do this. She would have had to control herself, but here she indulged. She let herself sob. After this, things were going to be difficult, and she would have to concentrate, so it was probably her last opportunity. She grew hypnotized by in-flight map. The red line began in Los Angeles, curved across the ocean, and terminated at a cartoon plane that never seemed to move. The screen occasionally switched to statistics like how fast they were moving and how cold it was outside, and these were fascinating because the numbers seemed made up. It didn't seem possible for the cartoon plane that didn't move to be traveling at 580 miles per hour, but it was. The flight was 14 hours. Her first problem, she realized, was that she was landing in Sydney with no return ticket, no luggage, wearing a school uniform. She didn't know what the Australian immigration service was like, and it seemed probable that she would raise a few flags. She would look exactly like an overprivileged white girl disappearing in a cloud of petulance on Daddy's credit card, and they would ask why she was here, and where she was staying, and when she was leaving. If they didn't like her answers, they would turn her around and put her on a plane back home, which of course superficially sounded like a great idea, except for the part where she failed to live in Broken Hill and use her own resources. Elliot had told her, please appreciate that this is the best possible outcome, and she had come to believe that. She needed to get through immigration. She extracted herself from her economy seat and made her way to the rear bathrooms. In the mirror, she practiced some expressions. Then she washed her face and unlocked the door. On the way back, she stopped beside a girl she had identified, who was sleeping roughly Emily's age, and opened her overhead locker and rummaged inside. There was a possibility of someone being awake and alert enough to say, excuse me, do those things belong to you? Of course, but not a large one, nor with serious consequences, and it didn't happen. She found a little suitcase and a duffel bag and went through these, standing on tiptoe. Inside were a purse, a wallet, a digital camera, which she took because maybe she could sell it, and a book. Also a coat, which could conceal her school uniform, so she tucked that beneath her arm. She closed the locker. 2 or 3 sets of eyes were on her, but they were all glazed and disinterested, their owners critiquing her hair or fantasizing about schoolgirls, and that was fine. She was just getting some other stuff. She cracked open the book and read it there, right next to the sleeping girl she'd robbed, like she was scratching her legs. Soon enough, a man came down the aisle, and she could retreat to her own seat without looking like a gateway. Just before the plane began to descend, she switched seats to avoid potential where's my coat situation. She was among the first to get off the plane, and she walked briskly toward customs, her new coat flapping around her ankles. The lines were short, not at all like in L.A., when she was able to take her pick of immigration officials. His name was Mark, and he was a 114 or 118. good-natured or reasonably intelligent, but resigned in his job, which he considered important but dull. This she could tell right away. No glasses, no beard, a simple hairstyle, but not a severe one, so no overt arrogance or vanity. No cross or religious markings, so she went for mirroring. She was Emily Ruff, simple and straightforward, slugging hours into a customer interface job as a DMV inspector, an entry-level position, but if you didn't do your job right, people could get hurt. Hi, she said, just right up. I don't have a return ticket. I'm sorry. I know that means you have to give me the third degree. 2 hours later, they released her for the interview room. They'd asked a lot of questions, but she never felt in real danger. Not from the moment Mark's face relaxed into her opening statement. She had lied a great deal, inventing a traumatic case at the DMV and a late-night Australian tourism ad, culminating in a spur-of-the-moment urge to get away. You understand that, right, Mark? The need to leave? She was charming and forthright and understood more about how the brain reached decisions than these guys did about anything, so that was that. She got rid of the coat before arrivals, in case the owner was still hanging around and filling out lost and found forms. She found a currency exchange place that let her sign up for $500 on a credit card. Australian dollars were hilarious, she discovered, bright and shiny like money for children. She liked them a lot. She bought a magazine and ate a cookie. She went to baggage claim and watched luggage go round and round, waiting for something wealthy, female, and unattended. A gray-suited official led around a beagle in a purple jacket and with sniffed luggage. When it found a banana in someone's carry-on, it sat on the floor and the official gave it a treat. In LA, they had been German shepherds. Eventually, a purple Louis Vuitton suitcase completed a third lonely loop on the carousel, so she tugged it off, balanced her Pikachu bag on top, and headed for the exits. The sun was brighter. The air smelled salty and felt wider somehow. She found a cab rank, and the driver wrestled her stolen suitcase into the trunk while she climbed into the back. Where to, love? The driver was white, something else she wasn't used to. Broken Hill, please. He turned in his seat. Broken Hill? Is that a problem? I don't know. It's 1,000 kilometers. Is that a problem? She felt stupid. How far is that in miles? 700 miles, give or take. Why had she assumed Broken Hill would be near Sydney? I'm sorry, in which state is Broken Hill? New South Wales. And where am I? New South Wales. He smiled at her in the face. We have big states, love. How do I get there? Which is the closest city? She hoped he was not about to say Sydney. Adelaide. So I can fly to Adelaide, she said, and drive from there. Yes, you can. Thank you. Sorry for your trouble. She began to get out of the cab. Only 300 miles from Adelaide to Broken Hill. He was grinning. Welcome to Australia, love. Thanks, she said. She couldn't secure a flight that day, so she caught a cab downtown and checked into a mid-priced hotel. With the balcony doors open, bringing in a breeze from the green-flecked bay, she sifted through the suitcase, inspecting skirts and jackets. She found a romance novel, the kind you wouldn't read on the plane, and a diary for appointments, not confessions. Still, she turned the pages. The woman saw someone named Matt R. a lot. Emily wondered if they met in hotel rooms like this. If after sex the woman talked to Matt R., telling him her hopes and problems and idle thoughts. She closed the diary. She had to get organized. Her stolen cards were already too dangerous to use. She wouldn't reach Adelaide on those. She turned to the mirror and fiddled with a shirt. It was a little big, but she could work with the cuffs. She picked up the phone and dialed the front desk. I want to play poker, she said, something informal. Eventually the guy stopped, recommending casinos, and steered her toward an upper room of a nearby bar. It turned out to be a middle-aged men in expensive suits, friendly and patronizing while she lost the first $200, smiling over the single malt whiskeys and advancing theories about creative ways to cover her losses. By then she had a queen under her left thigh and a king and an 8 under her right. It had been 3 years since she'd done this kind of thing, and a more attentive audience would have caught her. At one point she tried to feed a jack into her sleeve, and missed so badly that the card landed on the table. She tensed to run, but they only laughed, and one man said, That's enough grog for you. The man had red cheeks and was divorced, although he didn't know it yet. Sorry, Emily said, and put the card back in her hand. She took him for 2,800 in the final round, going all in. His face turned incredibly red like a balloon. No one was smiling now. The game's operator approached the table, but she didn't need to be told. She gathered her winnings, thanked them, and when she reached the street, ran as fast as she could back to her hotel. That was how she got to Adelaide. From there it was a bus ride, the world outside draining green until it was the color of snakeskin. The air conditioning barely worked, and she kept being woken by little trickles of sweat. There was only one other passenger, a woman with skin like coral, who nodded off before they were even out of Adelaide, and slept like she was dead. Emily wriggled around in her seat, seeking escape from her own body heat. Eventually she opened an eye to a passing sign, Broken Hill, population 10,100. One corner was missing and the rest was peppered with gunshot. It flared in the afternoon sun, leaning drunkenly out of the baked red earth. She sat up and saw a gas station abandoned, and a tin structure with no windows that was, she didn't know what, also abandoned. A flat, sagging house with a dirt yard full of disemboweled cars. She glimpsed a tall iron structure, vaguely Soviet, but it was on the other side of the bus, so she couldn't see it properly. A thin dog scratched in the dirt. Another low store. This one advertising cheap parts, although for what she didn't know. The windows of the stores on either side were blank. Everything was widely spaced, the center of its own little wasteland, and why not? Because she was quickly realizing that was all there was out here. Land, land, and land. She passed signs that said Sulphide Street and Chloride Street, because they had named their streets after minerals, apparently, and the bus turned out into Oxide Street and began to slow. She saw a sign that said City Center and thought, you have to be kidding me. When she stepped off, it was into burning air, the heat crawling into her nostrils and down her throat. And they hadn't updated the population sign in a long time, like maybe 20 years, because there might be 10,000 flies here, but not people. Definitely not people. She was standing at a crossroads. The streets were single lanes in each direction, but still as wide as highways. There were a handful of buildings, like they had fallen from above. The sky felt oppressively low, as if it were pressing down, combining with the blasted earth below to crush this town to nothing, and it made her feel as if she were expanding, like her insides wanted to crawl out of her body, like supposedly happened in space, where there was nothing to hold you in. Home, she said. It was supposed to be funny, but she felt like crying until she died. Confusion of tongues. Event in which a common language is abruptly replaced by many disparate ones. Considered mythical, see Origin Tales. Prominent examples. 1. Tower of Babel, Judaic myth. 1. Construction. 2. Dividing of speech. 2. Enki, Sumerian deity. 1. Divide speech. 2. The deluge. 3. Great dividing. Okay, it's back. Oh, thank goodness. 5. Jabbering madness. Oh, wait, sorry. Hermes, Greek deity. 1. Conflict with Zeus. 2. Divide speech. 3. Punishment. 5. Jabbering madness. Wasina myth. 1. Famine. 6. Tongues of a thousand corpses. Karna myth. 1. Cannibalism. 7. Vatea, Polynesian deity. 1. Construction of tower. 2. Divide speech. 8. The son of wind, Aztec myth. 1. Construction of Zaculai tower. 2. Dividing of speech. 3. Crossover mythology, Mayan. Nahuatl. More. The story of Tajura's name. Myth, confusion of tongues, indigenous Australian. In the dreaming, the land was flat. There were no gorges and no hills, no rivers. The animals lived in one tribe and spoke with one tongue so they could understand one another. One day, Tajura, the rainbow serpent, carved his name in the bark of a kolaba tree. He said to the other animals, "Look what I have done. I have written my name in this tree. So you must do what I say." The animals were impressed and did as Tajura said. They offered their food and made him a great shelter. They brought dirt from the land together and put it beneath the kulaba tree so that it was raised up, so they could admire Tajura's name, and that was the first hill. But Bora, the kangaroo, was not impressed. "Why should we give Tajura our food, our best bark, and work for him?" he asked. He climbed the hill and tore the bark from the kulaba tree where it spoke Tajura's name and buried it in the ground. The animals were ashamed and said, We shall speak in our own tongue, so we will not be impressed by Tajura's words. They went away, some north, some east, some west, some south, and that is why today the dingo howls, the frog croaks, the cockatoo screeches, and none can understand the other. Indigenous Australian languages. At the time of the European arrival, the indigenous peoples of Australia are estimated to have spoken between 250 and 400 languages, making it one of the most linguistically diverse places in the world. Almost all indigenous languages share several distinctive phonological features, e.g., lack of fricatives, which suggests the existence of a relatively small set of ancestors or perhaps even a single common language. Why this would have been abandoned, given its utility to intertribal communication, is unclear. 3. The waitress brought food and coffee and instructed them to enjoy. Will watched Elliot spread a napkin across his lap and pick up his cutlery and begin to dissect his eggs. He popped bacon into his mouth and chewed. Go on, Elliot said through bacon. Eat. Will picked up his knife and began to push food around. It was beyond him how Elliot could shoot people dead and fly all night and then tuck into a hearty breakfast. It was wrong, because Elliot had known those people at the ranch, including a woman he'd shot dead. Charlotte Bronte, and you shouldn't have an appetite after something like that. It suggested that Elliot really was psychopathic, not the crazy voices told me to kill way, but actually medically psychopathic in the sense of lacking the ability to feel anything. But even this bothered Will less than the way Elliot was eating, which was with the quick, purposeful movements, his eyes sectioning up the plate for maximum efficiency. This was wrong because Elliot hadn't slept since Will had met him. He should be exhausted. This is even better than I expected, Elliot said. He pointed at Will's plate with his knife. You need to eat. Will ate without enthusiasm. His bacon tasted like nothing, like a dead animal, fried. His eggs, aborted chickens. I'll say this for the Midwest, Elliot said. They know how to do a breakfast. Will poked a bacon strip with his fork. In its rufescent flesh, he saw the man he'd shot in the overturned pickup, the way he'd folded up. He put down his cutlery. Are you all right? No concern in Elliot's voice, of course. It was just a question, an inquiry after facts. Will rose and tottered to the rear of the diner. He found a single dirty toilet, lowered himself to his knees, and vomited. When he was done, he sat back against the wall, eyes closed, sweat popping all over his body. He decided to stay here a while. You were safe in a bathroom. It was a 4x6 cubicle of sanctuary, for as long as you wanted. When he could no longer believe this, he washed and re-entered the diner. A man in a trucker cap with hollowed cheeks and serial killer glasses eyed him over hash browns. Will could read his face clearly. He thought Will had been doing drugs. The waitress was sneaking looks at him, too. And there was a red-cheeked man wedged into a booth seat, who was watching a burbling TV bolted into the ceiling corner, but hadn't been a moment ago. He felt an urge to explain himself. It's not what you think. I've just had a really rough day. But that would be crazy. He would convince no one. He shuffled back to the booth. Elliot had finished his own breakfast and switched plates with Will. Hey, he said, order more. I'm paying. Are you? Well, no, Elliot said. But you know what I mean. Will sat. You could use the protein, said Elliot, chewing. What's your plan? These people. They're going to find us again, aren't they? They're looking for us right now. No doubt. So we need a plan. Elliot nodded. True. Do you have one? No. You don't? I have a short-term plan, Elliot said. I plan to finish your eggs. Will said nothing. Food is important. I'm serious about the protein. Do you have a plan or not? No. Shouldn't you, I don't know, be concerned about that? I am concerned about that. You don't look concerned. Would it make you feel better if I were sweating? Running to the bathroom to blow my cookies? It shouldn't. A panicked state is not helpful to a good decision-making. You would make me feel better if we were moving, Will said. Like if you got your eggs to go. Well, I like to know where I'm coming before I try to get there. It's a mistake to try and execute a plan before you've thought of one, in my experience. Will exhaled. Can you call them? Pardon me. Get a poet on the phone. You used to be one of them. Call them. And say what? I don't know. Persuade them to stop chasing us? That's what you do, isn't it? Yes, but it's also what they do. They offer them something, make a deal, give them something they want. But what they want is you. Something else. Elliot retired his cutlery. You're the key to an object of biblical power. They're not interested in substitutes. He stretched his arms. And when I say biblical, I mean literally from the Bible. He rubbed his face. Every time Elliot spoke, Will felt that he knew less. Keep talking, though, Elliot said. I feel like it's helping, in a process of elimination kind of way. We should hide then. Go somewhere. You do your poet thing, make people hide us. That's possible, right? Before yesterday, I would have said yes. We thought we were hiding. In light of recent events, though, it seems what we were actually doing is being observed until we led Wolf to you. So we can't hide. We can try. But to date, it hasn't been very successful. The waitress arrived to refill Elliot's coffee. She was young and pink-cheeked. Her name tag said Sarah. She seemed to be in awe of Elliot, although Will didn't know why. "Thank you, Sarah," said Elliot, and she blushed. "So we can't hide," Will said once she'd left. "And we can't negotiate, and we can't stay here, and you don't want to leave until we know where we're going. Is that about right?" "Yes," Elliot agreed. "That's about right." "Then what are we going to do?" "I believe our only option is confrontation, specifically the kind of confrontation that leaves them dead and us alive." "Okay," he said, "that sounds like a plan." "It's not, it's a goal." "Talking to you is like herding cats," Will said. Elliot raised his coffee and blew at it. "The problem is that Wolf and I are evenly matched, but she is excellently resourced and supported by skilled poets, while I have nothing and no one but you, and you're useless. That's not a personal commentary, it's a statement of fact. So I'm finding it hard to imagine any scenario wherein we confront Wolf and survive. It also means our enemies will continue to pursue us rapidly and relentlessly since we represent little danger. It's more or less the same problem that those of us who left the organization have faced for some time. Our enemies have a bear word, and we don't." "They have a what?" "The word that killed Broken Hill," Elliot said. "They have that. And it's a bear word." "Yes." "Which is what?" "Useful." He gazed at Will. "Hence our attempt to lift it from your brain. Still a good plan if it's in there." "You wanted it to use?" "I thought you wanted my immunity. You said you wanted to stop it." Said Elliot. "Some untruths were told, in the interests of acquiring your compliance. I was actually somewhat concerned at the time that you might use the word against me, but I don't remember it." "No." "If I did, oh, things would be different." "Wolf wouldn't be chasing us?" "She would," Elliot said, but more cautiously. Will looked out the window at snow and clouds like granite. He could not imagine living in dirt and desert. "I really don't remember anything about Broken Hill." "Well," Elliot said. He drained his coffee. "That's a shame." The waitress, Sarah, descended on them, refilling his cup. "Aren't you a peach?" Elliot said. "Are you from the East Coast?" She reddened. "It's just your accent." "You're right," Elliot said. "Well, I am. He's from Australia." "Really?" Sarah said, looking at Will in a new way. "I'd love to travel one day." "Oh, you should," Elliot said. "The world is closer than you think." Will looked out the window again. He felt tempted to rise, toss his napkin on the table, and walk out. Just walk down the road, snow falling in his hair, until something happened, one way or the other. At least it would be doing something stupid most likely, but something. "Now that necklace is truly beautiful," Elliot said. "Did you make it?" "It's my grandmother," said the waitress. "A carved piece of wood, a woman in profile, a relief. That's what you called it?" The woman looked stern. "I carved it from a photo." "I think you're very talented," Elliot said. "Sarah, I apologize, but would you give me a few minutes? I just thought of something I need to discuss with my colleague." "Oh, sure, no problem." She left. Will looked at Elliot. "F me," Elliot said. "The effing necklace." Will waited. From now on, when Elliot said something he didn't understand, he was going to wait. "We're going to Broken Hill." "Why?" "We thought she got it out, but she didn't. She made a copy." Will waited. Elliot said. "We need to move." He rose. The chopper sat above the road, billowing snow, making the power lines dance. Below them sat a small plane. It had been abandoned, and she could see the steps hanging out of its side. The pilot's voice crackled through her headphones. He was sitting right next to her, but sounded like he was dialing in from Mars. "You want to set down?" She shook her head. The pilot pulled back on the stick. The world below dropped away. They flew over snowfields that were like a million brilliant daggers, and she turned away, because it hurt the star in her eyes. She had a little supernova searing her retina. That was how it felt. It never really went away, but was always worse than the light. Any place she could see the sun. Sometimes she thought she could see it, a little white hole in the world. 2 minutes, said the pilot. We have a diner. Center of town. We are encircled, but we haven't approached. How do you want to do this? Safely, she said. Have them sweep it, please. The pilot nodded. She heard him passing on the instruction. Sweep it. We're staying airborne. The town emerged as a smudge in the snowscape. It had one road in and one road out, perhaps a dozen buildings. As they hovered, she watched black cars rocket up from each direction and disgorge tiny figures. They moved from building to building, gesturing and sometimes stopping to consult each other. The chances of them fighting Elliot and the outlier were 1,000 to 1. But she had to be careful. The thing to remember was that all the powers in the world didn't stop a bullet. She had been taught chess at the school years ago, and the point was that the pieces differed only in terms of their attacking power. They were all easily equal to kill. Capture. It was called capturing. The lesson was that you should be cautious about deploying your most powerful pieces because it only required one dumb pawn to take them down. The pilot got the signal and began to settle the chopper toward the street. She watched the town tilt toward her through the bubble windshield. Now's your chance, Elliot. I'm just sitting here. Elliot was a bishop, she figured, prone to sneaky long-range attacks, and more mobile than you'd expected. She never liked bishops. We're green, said the pilot. She unbuckled. A young man with long hair, Rosenberg, opened the door and offered his hand, which she found kind of insulting and ignored. The chopper's blades pulled at her hair. She studied the street, trying to sense trace elements of Elliot. Diner's clear, said Rosenberg. I'm guessing they acquired a car here. Maybe a couple of hours ago. 3 pearls inside, segmented and compromised. Instructed to obey. We haven't questioned them. Thank you, she said. I'll take it from here. She made for the low diner. A few poets moved toward her, and Rosenberg waved them away. Inside, behind the counter, was a young, scared waitress in a green apron. In a booth was a red-cheeked man, and she presumed was a farmer. A skinny guy in big glasses was manning the table. The door wheezed closed behind her. The man with glasses rose unsteadily from his table. I ain't cooperating with the government. You want to sit down, shut up. He dropped into his seat. She pointed to the waitress. You come here. The waitress jerked forward, clutching a notepad. Her eyes were huge. 2 men, 1 dark, 1 white. You know who I'm talking about? The waitress's head bobbed. Tell me everything you saw and heard. The waitress began to talk. A minute later, the farmer began to fish a cell phone from his jeans pocket. He was trying to be surreptitious, but his wide-checked shirt telegraphed every twitch. She found it fascinating. Did he think she was blind? She let him go a while until he got the phone out and opened its lid, as carefully as if it contained an engagement ring. Then she said, Put your hand in your mouth. And I poured him another refill, said the waitress. He was real nice, and he got to talking, and I asked if he was from L.A. or New York or somewhere like that, and he said yes, he'd been all over. He'd seen fireworks in London and riots in Berlin, and I should go, he said. He said the world was closer than I imagined. Those were his words. The farmer began to gag, and then he wanted to talk to his friend, the Australian, and after he asked if he could borrow a car, I said sure, and I gave him the keys to my car. I felt bad because I hadn't cleaned it for like a year, and I wished I had something nicer. I thought, I don't care what you thought. I asked where he might be going, and he said, where did I recommend? And I said, anywhere but here, and he smiled at that. Then we talked about places I had been, and I said, when I was a girl, my mom once took me to El Paso, just the 2 of us, and... Right, she said, stop. She pondered. The farmer made a sound like gwarg, and threw up around his hand. He had wedged the whole thing in there. She wouldn't have thought that was possible. She watched him twitch and gag. She should tell him to take that out. There is no benefit in a dead farmer. Did you hear any talk of towns, states, airports? Did you hear any talk of towns, states, airports? No. You have no idea where he's going. Wherever he wants, said the waitress. A man like that. Yeah, she said. Okay. Outside, her people would have gleaned which direction Elliot had gone, east or west. With the registration information, they would locate the car within a few hours. It would be abandoned, of course, at a gas station or on a side street, but that would be the start of a new trail. The fact was, Elliot could not keep moving forever. He could not move faster than the net she could draw around him. Nothing personal, Elliot, she thought. She wanted to shoot him, as in do it personally. She felt quite strongly about that. Also, before she did, she wanted a few minutes to talk things over. That was probably a pipe dream. It was hard to imagine circumstances in which she would be able to capture Elliot without killing him. But if she did, she would like to tell him that she appreciated the guidance he had given her in the beginning. She wanted to say, I wouldn't be who I am without you, Elliot, and have him see she meant it. The farmer jerked. His head hit the table. Vomit dripped to the floor. Take, she said, but it was too late. She had meant to tell him to take out his hand, but she had forgotten, or something like that. Hey, Emily, you know what stars do? They eat. They burn everything around until there's nothing left. Then they start eating light. You realize that's what you're doing, right? Eating everything? She looked at the waitress. The sensible thing to do here was to kill her. The girl had exchanged words with Elliot. She was potentially loaded with instructions. The possibility was small, but there was no sense in taking chances. It's not getting any better, is it? I mean, that's been obvious for a while now, right? But the star isn't going anywhere? Forget we were here, she told the waitress. That guy choked on his breakfast and you couldn't save him. She turned to leave. But you tried as hard as you could. They drove until dark, stopping only to eat and persuade people to trade vehicles. Will didn't want to watch but couldn't help it. At first the person who Elliot approached would look guarded. They drove until dark, stopping only to eat and persuade people to trade vehicles. Will wouldn't want to watch but couldn't help it. At first the person who Elliot approached would look guarded. Then Elliot would say something, and their face would break into a smile, like they didn't want to, but couldn't help it. It was fascinating how much they changed in that moment, from stranger person to friend person. They showed a completely different face, and then a minute later their expression would change again, becoming intimate and unarranged, and Will would turn away because watching what felt wrong. Embedded in a pink mini, a bobbing plastic cat on a dashboard, he said, So you have a plan now? Yes, Elliot jiggled the gear shift. He was not happy with Biff. Will had offered to drive, but Elliot had refused. He was beginning to think Elliot didn't sleep at all. Do I get to hear it? We go to Broken Hill, get the bear word, and use it to defeat our enemies. It's just sitting there in Broken Hill? That's my theory. You're not sure? No. What? No one thought to check? He didn't swing by, see if there's this, what, Bible grade weapon lying around? It wasn't quite as simple as swinging by. After Wolf, anyone who swung by didn't swing out again. But we're going in. Yes, Elliot glanced at him. You'll be fine. When you say we are going in, I mean you, since I'm not immune. We watched them pass a family sedan. A happy dog looked at him, and he felt jealous. What if you're wrong and I'm not immune? Well, that would be bad, but let's not get hung up on every little thing that might go wrong. I'm not saying the plan is foolproof. I'm saying it's preferable to driving aimlessly until our luck runs out. Then what happens? I give you the word? No, you must not speak it around me. Show it to me, or describe it even in general terms. I cannot emphasize this enough. Are you serious? Look at me, Elliot said. If you get this thing and drop so much as a hint about what it looks like, I will feed you your fingers. Do you believe me? Yes, they passed through a town advertising a beat festival from 3 years ago. I still don't understand how it's a word. Words can't kill people. Sure they can. Words kill people all the time. He wrestled the gear shift. Granted, this one is more direct about it. What makes this one special? Well, that's difficult to explain without referencing some fairly advanced linguistics and neurochemistry. Give me an analogy. There's a tree in a park. A tree you want cut down for some reason. You phone the city and ask which department you need to contract and which forms you need to fill out. Your application goes to a committee, which decides whether it makes a good case, and if so, they send out a guy to cut down the tree. That's the brain's regular decision-making process. What I do, which you call word voodoo, is I bribe the committee. It's the same process, but I'm neutralizing the parts that can say no. With me so far? Yes. All right. What's in Broken Hill is a bear word. A bear word in this analogy is me getting out of my chainsaw and cutting down the tree. Will waited. It's a separate pathway to the same outcome. I don't use the committee. I skip it. Does that make sense? I does for the trees. It's no different. Your brain has multiple pathways to action. You see a hot stove. You can consciously decide to stay clear of it. But if you stumble onto it, you'll jerk back without a conscious thought. So it's the difference between a voluntary action and a reflex, Will said. Yes. Why didn't you just say that? Because that's not an analogy. That's exactly what effing happens. You asked for an analogy. Okay, he said, although I still don't understand how a reflex can be triggered by a word. Words aren't just sounds or shapes, they're meaning. That's what language is, a protocol for transferring meaning. When you learn English, you train your brain to retract in a particular way to particular sounds. As it turns out, the protocol can be hacked. Can you teach me? What? What you do, the word voodoo. No. Why not? Because it's complicated. It doesn't look complicated. Well, Elliot said, it is. I don't see why you couldn't teach me a little. We don't have time to train you into a competent poet. If we did, it still wouldn't work because you're not naturally compelling. If you were, I still wouldn't because you have very little discipline, and we have learned recently that giving immensely powerful words to people with self-control issues is a very bad idea. I'm not naturally compelling? Elliot glanced at him. No, not really. I'm compelling. You're the only known outlier to a bear word, said Elliot. Hang your hat on that. He was silent. What makes me immune? Your brain doesn't process language quite like other people. Why that is, I have no idea. I have a superior brain? Elliot said. I wouldn't go that far. I can resist persuasion. Sounds like an improvement to me. I once had a coffee machine that wouldn't add milk no matter how I pressed the buttons. It wasn't better, it was just broken. I'm not broken. Who are you to say I'm broken? Elliot said nothing. It's evolution, Will said. You guys have been preying on us for who knows how long, and I evolved a defense. What was your girlfriend's name? What? Cecilia, right? Elliot glanced at the dash. 24 hours, you haven't mentioned her. What are you saying? I should be grieving? Elliot nodded. That's what I'm saying. Who the F are... I've been trying to stay alive. People have been driving cattle trucks at my body. Forgive me for not taking a minute to cry on your shoulder about my girlfriend. Solid reasons delivered with much defensiveness. You a-hole. As if you know anything about love. What do you think it is? Brain activity? Neurochemicals? I suspect it's a kind of persuasion. So I'm immune to it? That's your theory? The most fundamental thing about a person is desire. It defines them. Tell me what a person wants, truly wants, and I'll tell you who they are and how to persuade them. You can't be persuaded, ergo you don't feel desire. That's bullcrap. I love Cecilia, if you say so. I'm being lectured about love by a robot. I'm broken? You're broken. Tell me what you think love is. I seriously wanted to know. Okay, Elliot says. It's defining yourself through the eyes of another. It's coming to know a human being on a level so intimate that you lose any meaningful distinction between you, and you carry the knowledge that you are insufficient without her every day for 20 years until she drives an animal transport at you and you shoot her. It's that. Will watched the road a while. I'm sorry I called you broken, Elliot said. Forget it. Everyone's broken, Elliot said, in one way or another. He slept and woke to the windshield filled with a great metal lattice. A bridge, he realized, its steel beams splashed by yellow sodium vapor streetlights. Elliot had one arm slung over the seat and was reversing around oncoming traffic. A car swung by them, horn blaring. A motorcycle stuttered past, the driver yelling unintelligibly. They swung around a corner and Elliot turned off the Mini's engine. Traffic camera on the bridge, said Elliot. Almost drove through it. Will looked out at a coffee shop advertising waffles. The street was lined with tall, quaint buildings, most in pastel colors under a dusting of snow. The street lights were trimmed with iron lacework. No people in sight. It felt late. Where are we? Grand Forks. What are we doing? We're waiting, Elliot said. Once a little time has passed, we're going to walk across that bridge. One at a time, I think, since I may have aroused suspicion just now. On the other side, we're going to acquire a vehicle and continue to Minneapolis. There we'll take passport photos in subpar lighting conditions and visit the federal building on the 3rd Avenue South, which is a designated passport agency and can issue replacement passports to people who have had theirs stolen, which we will claim has occurred. We will be asked to provide documentation proving, firstly, that we're U.S. citizens, and secondly, that we are the people named in the first documents. This will occur in a genial, low-pressure interview, as opposed to at the front of an airport queue with an official holding out one hand for papers, so should allow me to compromise our interviewer into accepting our mall booth passport photos. The person will then begin the process of issuing new passports and false names with our photos on them. Doesn't that take weeks? No, it takes 4 hours if you pay the expedition fee. We will then take a roundabout route to Sydney, balancing the need to arrive before our false documentation is discovered against the need to avoid airports with face recognition technology. I'm thinking Vancouver and then Seoul, since Korean Air is a good airline for our purposes. No data sharing. Does that answer your question? Yes, they waited. Will yawned. A woman walked by who reminded Will of someone, but he didn't know who. Elliot opened the door. Wait 10 minutes and then walk directly across the bridge. Keep your head down. That's important. No looking up for any reason. Clear? Clear, he said. Elliot climbed out. The door went clunk. He watched Elliot's beige coat disappear around the coffee shop. The windows fogged. The car filled with cold. He thought about Cecilia. He met her in the pet store. He walked past and doubled back and pretended to be interested in puppies. Almost bought one, even, just because she was selling them. On their second date, he discovered she didn't like animals much. She only liked organizing them, deciding what they ate. She liked putting them in cages, basically. When Cecilia had started dropping marriage hints about 3 months in, Will had thought of that. He got out of the car. It was misty visibility down to a few hundred feet. He stuck his hands in his pockets and started walking, eyes down. The occasional car plumed by to his left, plowing slush. He reached the bridge and began to cross. A black river slid by below. It was a high bridge, long, too. He hadn't realized how long. A pickup truck made an odd note and he looked up before remembering how he was not supposed to do that. About halfway across the vehicle approached from behind and slowed. He kept walking. The car's tires crunched snow. It was keeping pace with him. He didn't turn. He could see the far side now, but no Elliot. The world splashed red and blue. Static barked. Sir, stop where you are. This was a megaphone. He stopped. A police cruiser rolled up to him. The door opened and a cop with a dark mustache climbed out. Mind taking your hands out of your pockets, sir? He showed his hands. Sir, are you the owner of a pink Mini, registration JCX140? No. You don't know that vehicle? No, officer. The wind blew. He looked at the edge of the bridge, but still no Elliot. Where are you headed tonight, sir? I'm just crossing the bridge. I can see that. Where are you headed? He checked for Elliot again. Am I keeping you from something? No, officer. I'm just cold. Put your hands on the hood, sir. Said Will. Put your hands on the hood. He placed his hands on the car. Legs apart, please. I'm just out walking. Legs apart. He obeyed. I'm going to pat you down now. Do you understand what that means? Okay, I was in the Mini. If there's a fine, do not turn around. I wasn't turning around, he said. The cop grabbed him by the neck of his jacket and spread him across the hood. It was a slab of ice. He could stick to this car. The cop's hands probed his legs and hips, delving into his pockets. He felt a loosening around his and realized the cop had taken his wallet. Will Park? That you? Look, stay on the car. You stay there until I tell you otherwise, understand? If you move again, we're going to have a problem. His cheek pressed against the hood, he saw a figure approaching through the snow mist. Elliot? He couldn't tell. Dispatch 413, the cop said. He felt alarm. A cop reporting that he picked up Will Park. That could be bad. He raised himself from the hood, keeping his hands up so the cop wouldn't overreact. But a nightstick leaped into his throat anyway, and he found himself bending backward over the hood, the cop shouting in his face. Wait, Will said. The cop wasn't interested in what he had to say. He caught a glimpse of Elliot's familiar coat approaching in brisk strides. The cop's grip on him slackened. His expression changed, as if the guy were watching TV, Will thought. Seeing something interesting but far away, the cop unhitched his radio. Dispatch, he said, and there were 2 flat bangs, and the cop pinwheeled backward. Elliot walked up to it and fired twice more. F, said Will. His voice was thin and breathless. What? Quiet. The air was beginning to glow. An approaching car. Elliot walked onto the road. Will looked at the cop. His eyes were glassy. Blood congealed around his body, staining the road salt. What about the word voodoo? Elliot didn't answer. Why didn't you persuade him? A pickup crested the bridge. Elliot waved his arm so the pickup stopped and the driver leaned out of the window. A young guy with sandy hair. Elliot was going to kill this guy, him and everyone else in the car, and then whoever passed by. Will started to run, slipped on the ice, and banged his knee on the blacktop. By the time he reached them, Elliot had his gun pointed at the driver. 50, the guy said. I don't know what you want. Elliot said, do you love your family? Elliot, of course I do, man. Please don't kill me. I have 2 girls, and I love them so much. I won't kill you if you tell me this, said Elliot. He was becoming brighter, almost glowing. Another car approaching, Will realized. Why did you do it? Elliot. He put his hand on Elliot's arm and tried to steer the gun down. Please don't shoot this guy. Is this about? Said the driver. Oh, forgive me. I did it because I had to. Elliot lowered the gun. The truck driver's breath came out in a rush. Thank you, thank you. Gitar Meselik Croton Avery, Elliot said. Take this. Shoot cars. Run away from cops. The driver took Elliot's gun. Elliot opened the pickup's door, and the driver stepped out. He looked up and began to walk toward Will. What? Will said. The guy raised the gun. Will had time to plug his fingers into his ears. The guy fired. Will turned to see a car behind him, a dark wagon. It braked and began to reverse, its beams swinging crazily from side to side. The guy broke into a run, following. Elliot seized his arm. Walk. He walked. Why? Will said. Why? Shut up, Elliot said. There was a flatness in his voice. Will shut up. Once they were clear of Grand Forks, the road was empty. After about half an hour, 3 police cars blew by in the opposite direction, all noise and light. And Will didn't say anything, and neither did Elliot. He watched the sky begin to lighten. You're not a good guy, Will said. You say you are, but you're not. I don't believe I ever said I was a good guy. You could have used your words on that cop. He was compromised. He was 2 seconds away from calling us in. You could have tried. A sign drifted by, announcing 200 miles to Minneapolis. You're just as bad as Wolf, he said. Elliot braked. Will's seatbelt grabbed him. The car slid to a steaming halt. I will take a lot of crap from you, Elliot said, but I will not be compared to Wolf. Shut up. The worst thing I have ever done is allow Wolf to become what she is. I will wear responsibility for everything she does, from Broken Hill until the day I put her in the ground. But we aren't the same, not even close. You kill people. Yes, I kill people, when the alternative is worse. That's the world. That's the reason you and I are still here. Will looked away. I'll come with you. I'll do what you say, but not because you're right. Elliot put the car in gear. Fine, he said. Close enough. At the Minneapolis airport, no one stopped them or looked twice at their passports, and they boarded a Delta E-175, its engines roaring outside the windows. Elliot rolled his coat into a tight bundle and wedged it between the headrest and the wall. I'm going to sleep. Will looked at him. Really? They were flying to Winnipeg. It was 40 minutes. Really, said Elliot, and closed his eyes. His face relaxed, his lips parted. Will began to think he wasn't breathing. When they lifted off, the plane yawned sharply, and the woman across the aisle let out a shriek, and Elliot's head flopped onto Will's shoulder. Elliot, he put his hand beneath Elliot's nostrils. He couldn't feel anything. He licked his skin and tried again. A faint current of air, very faint. He tried to relax. They landed roughly, but still Elliot didn't move. Will dug his elbow into his ribs. Elliot, he shook his shoulder. Tom. He shook him harder. He put his thumb and forefinger into Elliot's forearm and pinched. Elliot's eyes opened. They were like glass. His face was gray and drawn. He looked dead. We've landed. Elliot's eyes stared at something beyond the plane's ceiling. We're here, Elliot. You have to wake up. Elliot, he focused. What? You look terrible. I'm fine, Elliot said. And all of a sudden he was. He pulled the coat from the headrest and tucked it under his arm. Move. In Winnipeg, they caught flight to Vancouver, and again Elliot fell asleep as soon as they were on the board, and again rousing him upon landing was like trying to reanimate a corpse. In Vancouver, they crossed to the international terminal and passed through security without incident. The Korean air flight attendants wore blue paper hats. Elliot settled into a window seat with his rolled-up coat and closed his eyes. Wake me if we enter an unexpectedly steep descent, said Will, but Elliot seemed to be already asleep. Yeah, I'll do that. He flicked through the in-flight magazine and then put it back. He didn't think he would be sleeping. From http discuss.isthatjustme.com/forum/topic --11053 r.html ?v=1. Okay, I don't want to get into conspiracy theories, but you read about this guy who shot up Grand Forks? They said he'd had a fight with his girlfriend, so we all thought, oh, that's why he flipped up, but notice nobody has actually said there's a connection. They've just let us assume that's because why else would they mention it? I'm not saying there's something pure specific incident, but I see this all the time. If you watch TV news, every story is like this. There was a fire and the owner was in a financial trouble. They're not saying he burned down this own place, but that's all they're going to tell you. That bothers me because we think we're being clever, putting the pieces together, but it's a setup. We've only been given pieces that fit together one way, but if it turns out they make the wrong picture, well, they never said it was right. Unless it's a really big deal, like a national story, all the reporting comes from one reporter who writes down what the cops say. That goes on AP and the news services all share it. So it can look like they've all done their research and found the same facts, but it's usually just everyone promoting one source. Now, probably the guy in Grand Forks really did just get peed off with his girlfriend, but I think it's worth noting that literally nobody has claimed that's why he started shooting. If they'd said it was a mystery, then people like us would get curious and ask questions, but apparently all it takes is one unsubstantiated hint, and we're satisfied because we think we figured it out. 4. She became promiscuous. It wasn't planned. It was because there was nothing else to do. She thought of herself as promiscuous rather than easy because she was in charge. If a boy came into the clothes store where she worked and had a look in his eye that meant he'd heard about her, she would play dumb and sell him new khaki pants. But if, and that didn't happen often, only sometimes, there was a boy with curly hair and dark eyes and he was genuinely shopping, then something inside her would yearn. She would walk over and say, "Can I help you?" And if the boy was orbited by a badly permed blonde, which he usually was, she would recommend shirts and eye him while his girlfriend fingered skirts, and he would look back and there would be something there. When the girl decided to try something on, Emily would walk directly to him and kiss him like a predator, and he kissed her back every time. And if she reached down, he was hard as stone. "How's it going?" she would call, her eyes on the boy, and the girl would say something about the fit and around the shoulders and the color, and did they have it with the bows? She didn't always take it further than that. Twice the girl came out early and the boy walked out of the store on loose legs, throwing her glances, but twice she did. The last time the boy had been accompanied by a black-eyed girl who didn't even answer when Emily came over and said hello, and she liked the look of this boy. He was friendly and dumb and played football, so she not only invaded his pants while this girl was behind the change room door, but kept going when she came again. She watched the boy's face as the girl revolved around the store, fascinated because he looked so scared yet didn't stop her. The girl inspected dresses and made a catty comment about the decade in which she believed one of them belonged, and the boy grunted and twitched his jeans. Emily walked behind the counter. He looked at her like he couldn't believe she was abandoning him, like he thought she had a plan to help him out or something. But she didn't care about that. The interesting part was over as far as she was concerned. The boy stood rooted there a few seconds, then blurted a bunch of mostly unrelated words. The spillage from 2 or 3 trains of thought that had just collided. The girl didn't even look up. "Okay," she said, turning over a fluffy hooded jacket. This was probably not what Elliot had meant when he told her to work hard and discipline yourself, but she was a million miles from everywhere, doing an otherwise excellent job of concealing the fact that she was the most skilled practitioner in persuasion ever to grace this dust bowl, and she needed something. She couldn't have muscles and not flex them. She had slept 2 nights at a bus station before realizing the town was full of empty houses. You only had to break in and make yourself at home. She found a job at Tangled Threads, Broken Hill's hip clothing store for young and old and anyone else interested in one level of fashion above denim and wife beaters, and it paid cash, which meant she could rent something with electricity. It was all simpler than she had imagined. She even bought a battered old car, which was a little risky because she didn't dare attempt to acquire a driver's license, but the town had only 2 cops, both from segments she understood well, and she was really sick of the bus. She was the American girl. Her story was that she had come to connect with the earth, a ludicrous idea, patently false to anyone who watched how she squinted at the sun, hugged herself against the wind, and grimaced at the dirt. But seriously, why else would you come here? "How long are you staying?" people asked, leaning across the counter to marvel at her. This person who had left America to come here, even as every other local youth with half a brain fled at the earliest opportunity. The older ones, who had lost the ability to imagine life elsewhere, or maybe never had it, seemed to view her as the first of many, as if Emily were the harbinger of a hip new fad of sweeping the globe, where people who were young in big cities, sweated and saved and dreamed of one day traveling to connect in Broken Hill and give the town a future. She told them, I think maybe a year, because she didn't want to give them false hope and couldn't bear the thought that it might be longer. But a year passed, and then another, and then she was on her 21st birthday, watching senseless Australian television in a 4-bedroom house with hardly any furniture. She sometimes wondered if the organization existed, whether she had imagined it. Sometimes when the door jangled open at Tangled Threads, she would think for a second it was Elliot, come to tell her. It was okay, it was over, she could come home. But it never happened. It was just day after day of waiting. So she could take control of a good-looking boy now and again. She could do that. One night after closing, she walked to the rear parking lot and found a group of girls in short skirts and fur-lined jackets waiting for her. One hopped off the hood of a car as she approached, the dirty blonde girlfriend of the football player, and Emily realized she had a problem. She turned to flee to the store, but two more girls were blocking the path. She held up her hands. I don't have any money. Not interested in your money, said the girl, letting something drop from her hand. A metal chain. Emily felt despair, not so much for herself, but for the girl in Broken Hill, Australia, because a chain was ridiculous. If you pulled that crap in San Francisco, you would get yourself shot. You know who I am? I think you came into the store one time, the girls encircled her. 5 in total, no other weapons in sight, which made running a good option. If you want to return something, we open at 9. I don't want to return something, you slut. It's not a store, said a girl who was thin as a dead tree. It's a shop. Okay, said Emily. Can we talk this over, please? She drew out the word please. Made it sound like police, to remind everybody that crap like this could get you arrested. Oh, I know you. I know your mom. This was not true, but totally believable in a town this size. The point was to bring moms into the picture, to join police. You came onto my boyfriend, said the girl. This Emily recognized as speculative assertion, what they called test balloons in class. When people made speculative assertions, they hoped to be disproved. It meant the girl wasn't going to hit her with the chain. If she had said, I'm going to F you up for what you did to my boyfriend, Emily would have been in trouble. But she was just standing there waiting for Emily to respond and explain how it was all a crazy misunderstanding. She almost felt disappointed because it had been an interesting mental challenge there for a minute. Actually, he came on to me, Emily said, and she must have wanted to be hurt. It was the only explanation. The girl stared at her, trying to believe her ears, and another girl said, Oh, it's on, Bee. And Emily ran. She almost got through a girl with a bad acne and scared eyes, and someone grabbed her collar and dragged her to the ground. The girl with the chain came at her in pure rage, and despite the imminent whipping, Emily felt a mild pleasure at successfully pushing her beyond pre-cortex control. That wasn't easy. You really had to sock a person in the core for what they believed to do that. She threw her arms around her head and curled into a ball. Pain exploded on her back. She tried to roll over, and that was a huge mistake because the chain caught her across the face. Her mouth disappeared. She found her knees and tried to crawl away. Something bright and bloody lay in the dirt. A tooth. She felt sad and stupid and wanted to go back in time and not be such a D. Lights flared. She couldn't see where they were coming from, but apparently they were relevant because the girls fell away. Shoes slapped concrete. There were no new blows. That was an improvement. Someone took her by the shoulders. She flinched. He said, It's all right, relax, I'm helping. Moof, she said, which was supposed to be my tooth. The man's fingers invaded her ribs. He went away and she felt lost. He came back and snapped something around her neck. She tried to rise, but he said, No, no, restraining her with one hand. All she could see was his hair, which was long and the color of sand. He slid something beneath her butt, which turned out to be a trolley. Matouf, she said. He ratcheted her up and sailed her across the parking lot into a white van that she knew was passed for an ambulance out here. Before he closed the doors on her, his eyes scanned her in a quick, professional way. By the time the vehicle stopped and the hands began to unload her, she wasn't sure where she was. Pub brawl? Someone asked, and the man said, Girl fight out back Tangled Threads. A woman bent over her face. She's lost a tooth. It's in my mouth, said her rescuer. This sounded funny to Emily, and she smiled, and after that she didn't remember saying anything. Time must have passed, though, because she was sitting in a hospital bed in an open ward with morning light streaming in. She was wearing a thin gown, and her neck was encased in a brace. Her back was full of golf balls. She had a loose tooth in her mouth, and probed it with her tongue, but thought she should probably not do that. Her head was glass, but otherwise she felt pretty okay. A nurse stopped by. Emily had seen her buy soy milk at the local supermarket sometimes. "Morning, darling. How are you feeling?" "Good," she said. The nurse put her hands on Emily's face. "Open up. Good. You're leaving the tooth alone?" "Yes." She released Emily's mouth. "What happened?" "I lost control. I proved I don't belong here." "Nothing." "Gary wants to talk to you." "Who's Gary?" "The police sergeant." She tried to shake her head. She didn't want to press charges. She had no identity. "How long do I wear this?" "6 weeks, and count yourself lucky." She did. It could easily have been worse. "Who picked me up?" "The para?" She didn't know what this meant. "The man with the ambulance van." "Paramedic. That's Harry. He kept the tooth viable." "Can I thank him?" "He's off duty," said the nurse, "and I'm sure you'll see him around. It's a small town, if you notice." "Yes," said Emily. She had seen that van around, white with yellow and orange stripes. She must have seen it twice weekly since she got here. But of course, now that she was released from the hospital, leading with her chin because of the brace, it was nowhere to be found. Sometimes she got a flash of white and turned to see if it was him, pain spiking through her neck, and she was too slow. She thought, "I bet it was." It was very junior high being attracted to an ambulance driver, falling for a man who had rescued her. She felt girlish, but her thoughts kept returning to how he had carried her tooth in his mouth, also his hair in the ambulance headlights. She felt hot and restless and went on lots of walks, during which she might encounter a white van with yellow and orange stripes. She decided to buy him flowers. She would just buy flowers at a cart, and if he wasn't at the hospital and she dropped them off, that was fine. She would just leave them. She sweated over what to write, firmed on "Thank you from the bottom of my tooth," stared at it in horror, and then went back to the store for a new card. On the second attempt, she went dignified. "Thank you for saving me, Emily Ruff." Maybe it wasn't completely dignified, because she couldn't resist writing "saving me," or supplying her full name, but she didn't include a phone number. She managed that. She drove to the hospital. The flowers in the passenger seat with air blasting at them to stave off the heat. The woman at the front desk thought she was there for an appointment, which Emily guessed was logical given the brace, and once that was straightened out, said, "Did you want to see him or just leave these?" Emily panicked and said, "Just leave them." She got as far as the doors. "Is he here, though?" The woman looked at Emily like she had seen it all million times before and said, "I'll see." She picked up the phone. Emily waited and tried not to feel 14 years old. The woman replaced the receiver. "I'm sorry." In the car, she gripped the wheel and berated herself. What would Elliot think? He would be ashamed. He'd tell her to get used to Broken Hill, because the way she was acting, she was never going home. She might as well buy a house and get a couple of dogs and marry Harry the paramedic and live there forever. That was atrocious to her. She became Pavlovian to the bell that jangled whenever someone opened the Tangled Thread store, but it was never him, and after a few days she understood that it would never be. He saw the flowers for exactly what they were, an awkward, fantastical sally at romance. She felt angry at herself and him for making her act like that, because, to be fair, he'd caught her in the middle of a trauma. She hadn't been herself. Who was he to judge? But he was nobody in a dinky, blown-away town, and he didn't even have a proper ambulance, and his hair was old-fashioned. The only reason she'd even looked at him twice was that he had had no competition. She itched for a boy to walk in, someone cute and stupid. She stood behind the counter and tidied the racks until everything was the same. At noon she walked to the local burger place and stood in line behind the miners. Not muscular guys in sleeveless shirts with pricks and sexy suit stains, like you might expect, but fat truck drivers and crane operators who smelled like oil. Hardly anyone actually went to the mines anymore. That part was automated, and there was hardly anything to go into. For the most part, the mines were great open-cut quarries that looked like meteorite craters. The town surrounded a huge one, separated from it by a towering wall of mullock, which was the stuff they dragged out of the ground that wasn't worth anything but had to be put somewhere. No one seemed to mind this strange, living in a town shaped like a donut, slowly filling on the edges of the hole with crap. She wanted to ask why they didn't move the town about 5 miles north or south, or east or west for that matter, any random direction. But she could predict the response. They would say, "Because this is where it is." Australians were very practical, Emily had found. They did things quickly and purposefully and to the absolute minimum standard required. It was refreshing and genuine, but sometimes led to situations like building a town around a hole. Originally, she'd thought the name Broken Hill was a joke, part of the perverse humor that led them to nickname the people with red hair Bluey, because besides the mullock, the place was as flat as a mirror. but apparently there had been a hill once. It had been mined away. She had inhaled stale sweat and cigarettes until she reached the counter, then ate her burger at a table outside, watching traffic. Everything that passed she'd seen before. She turned her head, testing her neck, saw the paramedic van parked across the road. She felt panic, but she was over him, remember? She had forgotten that for a second. She relaxed. She began to look for him casually. She hoped she did see him, so she could discover exactly how plain and boring he was when he wasn't carrying her tooth in his mouth. She ate her burger. She saw him. It might have been him. He was coming down the sidewalk talking to a woman. He shook his head. It definitely was him. He was cute. She might have been suffering from head trauma, but he did have a taste. Sorry, but she did have a taste. He was broad and shouldered. His arms were incredible. He was not wearing a wife-beater. As he drew closer, she pegged his age at maybe 25. The woman was an attractive brunette Emily had seen featured in real estate advertisements. She laughed at something Harry said, tossing her hair, and Emily was totally fine with that. Emily wished Miss Real Estate the very best of luck with her handsome Australian paramedic. She almost let them walk by, then she decided what the H. There was no problem, so why not? Hello, he stopped. His eyes, she had forgotten those. You're toothless. Right. She saw him thinking about the flowers. He had found that awkward. Just wanted to say thanks, she said. Don't let me hold you up. The real estate woman smiled and snaked a hand into Harry's. He seemed relieved that she was not turning on the crazy. No problem. The real estate woman began to lead him away. Suddenly he skipped back to her table and stuck out his hand. I'm Harry. She took his hand, surprised, and he grinned and returned to the real estate woman. She felt unsettled. She watched him walk away. What was that? Did he just try to pick her up? That was outrageous. She picked up her Coke and looked after him again. Her heart was jumping. She thought, F. She decided to sleep with him and get it over with. It was the only way. He had become an annoying jingle, striking in the shower, or at work, or just as she was falling asleep. She had to at least kiss him deeply or completely in a way that left nothing behind, so she could move on, so she could stop imagining it, so she could keep losing herself to the jingle. It was impairing her ability to function. Once she turned him into a toy like those boys in Tangled Threads. It would be all right. She would be back in control. She bought a dress, a little black scrap from Tangled Threads that she'd told away from 3 potential customers in case of an occasion like this. She did her hair going for volume, not the kind of hair girls liked, the kind for boys. She detonated mascara. Friday night she pushed into a smoke-filled sweat tank in the main bar, the pub, and looked for him. The place was full of bright-eyed teenagers and crusted-on minors, opposing demographics, normally united by their passion for beer and angry guitars. A boy screamed, Vince, in her ear. There were reasons she did not normally come here. She negotiated a lap and began to feel discouraged. Then she spied him at the bar with a few other young men in collared shorts. She walked up and yelled, Hi! Harry smiled at her. Buy me a drink, she said. 4 hours later, her head buzzing, she was in the passenger seat of his paramedic van, being driven home. Not to her home, to his. She had unsnapped her seatbelt and draped herself across him, kissing his neck, nibbling his ear, which was an excellent way to die in a car accident, if she'd thought about that, but she hadn't. She thought only of getting him alone in a room and doing terrible things. He drove and finally stopped. A dog slobbered on her legs, and she screamed, and he picked her up. She liked that. It reminded her how they'd met. His house was dark, but there was a bed and a moon outside. She tried to unbutton his pants, and he said no. And she said yes, putting some emphasis behind it, a little more lower frequency that sounded commanding, but it didn't work. By the bed he touched her neck, and this was what she had been missing, she realized. All of her predatory behavior had included no reciprocity, and that was important. She had forgotten. She went after him again, and this time he took her wrists in one hand and trapped them on the pillow above her head. I want you, she said. Let me touch you. No, he said, and she found this even more arousing for some reason. She did enjoy a challenge, but his hands moved down her body, and she lost the will to argue. Yes, she said, yes, but she saw glittering eyes in the darkness outside, his dog, watching them. She didn't care. She was going someplace else. His touch was careful, and she hadn't really known what it was like to be cared for. It was a night of newness. He held her, and his fingers moved inside her, and then her climax moved through her like a thunderclap, like a force of nature, something she could not control at all, and she had to lie until she could find herself. He let go of her wrists. He was still wearing pants, like she needed to address that. Now, she said, and finally he nodded and said now, and she basically attacked him. In the morning she woke, and he was not there. She sat up. The bedroom had no curtains. Beyond the window was flat earth as far as the horizon, The bedroom was a crime scene of twisted sheets and scattered clothes. Aside from the bed, there was no furniture, no paintings, no photos. On the kitchen table, she found a note. Gone for a ride. Help yourself to brekkie. A ride, she thought. He had gone for a ride. He had departed on some mode of transport to an unnamed destination for unknown reasons for an undeterminate length of time. She was glad he had explained that. She investigated the room. There was a photo of the dog on the TV. It was the only really personal thing she could see, so she picked it up. A big dog, a man's dog. She put the photo back. She was not desperate for insight into Harry that she needed to analyze his dog. She went into the kitchen and pulled open the fridge. She ate cereal. She showered. She padded naked into his bedroom and rifled through his wardrobe. She saw no books. She didn't know what he did with himself. She started the dishes, and while scrubbing a pot, suffered a sudden, appalling flash of perspective. He was waiting for her to leave. That was what the note meant. She dropped the brush and went to look for her clothes. There was a joke, or a puzzle, that went like this. A woman meets a man at her mother's funeral. They hit it off, but the woman never gets the man's name, and afterward she can't find him. A few days later, she murders her sister. You were supposed to figure out why, but if you did, it meant you were a psychopath. Because the reason was the woman wanted to meet the man again. Emily thought about this a few times over the next few days when she found herself fantasizing about staging a medical emergency. She finally drove out to his house. It was dark and she got lost on the dusty roads, and she almost went home a dozen times because it was one thing to sleep with him, it was another to go back. What she was doing felt dangerous, like sailing off the edge of the world. Eventually she trundled up the long driveway. The house lights were on, but she left the engine idling because she still wasn't sure she should be here. Or rather, she knew but wanted to anyway. The front door opened. He came out, shielding his eyes. When he saw her, he smiled. That decided it. She got out of the car. Is this a bad time? She was being polite. Nope, he said. I thought I'd come see you. Glad you did. She hung by the car. Come in, he said, and she did. 3 months later, she moved in. She was effectively living there anyway. She suggested it during the credits for an Australian comedy that he loved, and she was growing to hate less and less. I should move in, she said. Maybe it wasn't a suggestion, but that was how she meant it. She used persuasion techniques on Harry sometimes, but nothing he couldn't break. She liked it that way, trying to manipulate him and failing. If she'd had his words, it would have been different. There would have been no challenge at all. She cooked for him. She actually cracked eggs and fried them up and carried them to him on a tray. When she lay in the crook of his arm, she felt safe. He took her riding. He had dirt bikes, a garage full of them, and they went bouncing across the countryside. He taught her how to hold a rifle so it didn't bruise her shoulder, how much to allow the tug of gravity on a bullet over the distance. When the night was clear, they sat on the back porch, drinking and making love as the sun dissolved into earth. Before this, she had only ever viewed the skies as hostile. He made her notice how the raw beauty in it, the power in the blasted earth and skeletal trees, how it was all there for a reason. Even the snakes, which Emily would never stop being terrified of, they were everywhere you least expected them, like deadly ropes, and she came to see less as belligerent and more as aggressively defensive like her. She had lived in Broken Hill for 2 years and never understood it. The first time he shot a kangaroo, she'd cried. She'd known he hunted them, that they were vermin, but the sight of the brown fur and the dust, the oddly human lips peeled back from small teeth was too much. They're pests, he said. Eat anything that grows. Still, she said. He set the rifle against the bike. You know the story about the kangaroos? What story? The Aboriginal story. There was a girl, Minawara. She was clever, good with a spear, eyes that could spot a kookaburra a kilometer away. One day she stole a sling. The sling was supposed to belong to the whole tribe, but Minawara hid it in a pouch. When the tribe discovered the sling was missing, they came to be angry. They became very angry. And the elder asked Minawara if she had taken it, and she said no. So the elder put magic on the ground, and when the ground began to get hot, the elder said, Are your feet warm, Minawara? That was the magic. Only someone who lied would feel the heat. She said no, her feet were fine, but soon she couldn't stand it, so she began to hop from one foot to the other, and then she jumped. The elder said, Why are you jumping, Minawara? And she said, I like to jump. I will always jump. And she did. She jumped everywhere for the rest of her days because she was so stubborn to give up the sling. Her feet grew long and tough, and she was the first kangaroo. That makes it worse, Emily said. Now it feels personal. She looked at poor Minawara. But she's a thief, said Harry. He didn't talk. That is, he didn't talk without a specific purpose. She found this unnerving. It made her wonder what he wasn't saying. At first she probed him relentlessly. asking about politics, putting unlikely hypotheticals to him about their relationship over dinner. One night, just as he was drifting off, she said, "Who do you think is smarter, you or me?" She was a person who needed to know things. She didn't want to guess what was in his head. She wanted to hear him say it. This was how she avoided surprises. One day she found an odd contraption in his head, a tangle of frayed rope and petrified wood, and marched it to him where he was repairing a fence post 300 yards away. "What's this?" He glanced at it. "Mobile." "What does that mean?" She shook it. Dust fell. It looked about 1,000,000 years old. Each section of petrified wood had a dark mark on it, and some of the marks looked strange. "It's a mobile," he said, "for babies." She sat in the dirt. "You need to talk more. It's a mobile, isn't enough for me. Understand?" "No," she saw. "Why do you have a mobile? Where did it come from? What are these marks? What do you think about it?" He sat up. "I'm not used to people who don't talk," she said. "It's honestly freaking me out." He pulled her toward him, which she resisted for a moment, his arms around her, the smell of his sweat spoiling her judgment. He said, "You think I need to say something to make it real?" "Yes, that's exactly what I think." He composed his thoughts, taking his time. "My father was a miner, back when the mines were bigger. When he found something interesting down there, he brought it home. He made that mobile for me when I was born. I found it when I went through his stuff after he died, decided to keep it in case I ever needed it. I think it's a good mobile." "Okay," she said. "Thank you. That's all I needed." "Was that so hard?" He began to kiss her. Things deteriorated, but later she thought about what he'd said, about not needing to say something to make it real. This contradicted what she'd been taught. The brain used language to frame concepts. It employed words to identify and organize its own chemical soup. A person's tongue even determined how they thought to a degree, due to the subtle logic pathways that were created between concepts represented by similar looking or sounding words. So yes, words did make things real, in at least one important way, but they were also just symbols. They were labels, not the things they labeled. You didn't need words to feel. She decided he had a point, but it felt so strange. He was a catch, of course. Women stopped her in the street to congratulate her. They cackled and wished her all the best. She was going down in Broken Hill folklore as the girl who tamed Harry. There was a history, obviously, a procession of girls who had not tamed Harry, but she didn't ask about that, not even when she ran into the real estate woman who had been with Harry before, the two approaching each other down a grocery store aisle like reluctant jousters. The whole time they were talking, the woman telling Emily about the benefits of freshly squeezed orange juice versus concentrate, Emily was thinking, what happened? Because this woman had been with Harry and now she wasn't. So how had that happened exactly? How did Harry handle a relationship breakup? Was he cruel, deceitful, indifferent? These were questions she wanted answered. But she didn't ask them. She knew not to go snooping around for an endless, useless thing unless she wanted one. She realized now that until she had come to Broken Hill, she had never been happy. BNP builds voter profile database. The British National Party has compiled personal details of tens of thousands of voters. It was revealed on Friday. The database, named Electrac, is used to personalize pamphlet, door-to-door, and telephone campaigns. Mark Mitchell, 38, claimed he worked for the BNP 8 months on the project, gathering information from sources including surveys, letters to the editor, online posts, and attendance at events. He said it allowed voters to be segmented into different groups, with each group receiving targeted material during the lead-up to the general election. A spokesperson for the BNP acknowledged the use of Electrac, but said the practice was widespread amongst political organizations and no privacy laws were breached. IRC transcript from IRCnet number World Chat 2011122601118 IRC client. Maslop. Meh. Maslop. I just don't see the problem. Victor. Okay. Victor. It's like this. Victor. I'm campaigning in the street. Victor. Door to door. Victor. And before I knock, I look at a paper that says Maslop, 21, male. Top concern is whether he'll have a job next year. So I knock and say, "Hello, Mr. Maslop. I'm running for office and my number one priority is job creation." Right? So you're thinking, wow, this guy gets it, he's got my vote. Then I go next door, and this time I say, "Hello, Miss Kitty Pendragon. I'm running for office and my number one priority is fighting climate change." Yay! Because my paper says that's what Kitty Pendragon cares about. But that's good. They should know what people think and want. Well, I say get elected. What's my top priority? You see? Yeah, but at least they're listening to people. It determines a key plank of democracy. The part where candidates have to declare where they stand. You don't see a problem? Not really. Privacy policy. 13. TrueCorp takes customer privacy seriously. Your personal data is stored securely and will not be released without your permission. We use state-of-the-art encryption and physical anti-intrusion systems to prevent access to our secure data facilities. Okay, I probably actually should stop for now. I finally reached about the part where I'll have to charge the Nook. Yep, I have to charge it. Before I say goodbye, I'm going to do something really quickly.